Chapter 260. Yin, or what's wrong? Did you have a dream? Liemo frowned as he looked at Yun Ruoyan's teary eyes. Yes, I had a dream. Yun Ruoyan sat up with Limeau's support. What did you dream of? Limeau's heart ached for Yun Ruoyan. This was the first time he'd seen her cry since they'd met. Yun Ruoyan shook her head, not answering Limeau's question. Instead, she closed her eyes and tried to recall the scene in her dream. However, she suddenly realized that she couldn't remember what the man called Longin looked like. Everything in her dream was abnormally clear in her mind. The man's attire, the pheasant he carried in his hand. Lin Yueme's pot-bellied, smiling face, the green mountains, the clear waters, the birdsong, and the fragrance of flowers. But strangely, Yun Ruoyan couldn't remember what the man looked like. I can't remember. Yun Ruoyan buried her face in her knees and clutched her head in pain. Yin, don't think about it if you can't remember. Liemo patted Yun Ruoyan's back comfortingly. It's just a dream. It's fine if you forget. After a while, Yun Ruoyan finally lifted her head from her knees. When she looked at Liemo again, her eyes were clear and bright. However, she didn't know if Liemo could see through the layers of fog behind her eyes. By then, the sky was already bright, and Zhuo Yifeng was most likely waiting for the two of them below. The two of them tidied up their clothes and prepared to meet up with him. Similarly, Yun Ruoyan had slept in the bird's nest for a night. Limeau's hair and robes were neat and tidy, but she herself was in a sorry state. After rushing all day and battling with the giant bull, her white uniform was a little disheveled. If possible, Yun Ruoyan really wanted to find a place to clean herself up. Just then, a clear and melodious chirp could be heard from below. Although she couldn't understand what Emoa was saying, she could sense the flattery in its voice. Liemo shook his head and frowned. What a greedy bird. Only when the two of them descended from the forest did Yun Ruoyan realize why Xiao Emo was calling her so obsequiously. Zhuo Yifeng had already set up the fire. He had also sliced up the ox tongue and skewered it on the edge of the fire. Zhuo Yifeng turned back to greet Yun Ruoyan, then continued to sprinkle powder on the ox tongue. The fragrance of the spices began to spread. Xiao Emo flapped its wings and circled around Zhuo Yifeng, chirping again. What a gluttonous bird. Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but smile when she saw Mo's impatient expression. During breakfast, Yun Ruoyan recalled the rumbling that had occurred in the night and asked Zhuo Yifeng about it. According to Zhuo Yifeng, in the middle of the night, a large group of beasts had suddenly appeared in the direction of the forest. Those beasts were all quite large. However, based on their auras, Zhuo Yifeng guessed that most of them were low-rank beasts, and their cultivation was probably lower than that of the giant ox. After breakfast, the three of them continued deeper into the forest. Along the way they frequently encountered beasts, but most of them were low-rank beasts. Instead of restraining their auras, the three of them released their auras so that the low-rank beasts would avoid them. Some of the stronger beasts would occasionally provoke the three of them, but they were all killed by Zhuo Yifeng and Yun Ruoyan without needing Limeau's help. However, although these low-rank beasts didn't have a high cultivation, they were unusually large, and killing them took a lot of Yun Ruoyan and Zhuo Yifeng's energy and spiritual energy. As a result, the three of them slowed down to a certain extent. After killing 3 or 4 low-rank beasts and obtaining a fire-attuned beast core, a wood-attuned beast core, and 2 wind-attuned beast cores, Liemo decided to restrain his aura and speed up their journey. Because they had expended so much spiritual energy and stamina, the three of them found a place to rest in the evening. Yun Ruoyan and Zhuo Yifeng meditated to gather the spiritual energy in their spiritual vortex, while Liemo stood guard over them. Ever since she had become a peak 7th-rank blade master, Yun Ruoyan's spiritual vortex had more than doubled in size. Her spiritual sea was now divided into 2 parts. 2/3 of it was ordinary white spiritual power, and the remaining 1/3 was directly transformed into red fire elemental spiritual power. Yun Ruoyan channeled the spiritual energy from the heavens and the earth into her body, gathered it in her dantian, and then converted some of it into fire-attuned spiritual energy. Finally, she slowly opened her eyes. Her surroundings had once more fallen into darkness. By her side, Zhuo Yifeng was still meditating. Yun Ruoyan lifted her left hand and saw a string of ordinary-looking wooden beads next to a simple silver bracelet. Yun Ruoyan had learned from Qiuqiu that this seemingly ordinary wooden bead was actually a precious qilin bracelet, which could help its wearer convert fire-attuned spiritual energy into fire-attuned spiritual energy. Yun Ruoyan's success in converting fire-attuned spiritual energy was all thanks to the qilin bracelet. Yun Ruoyan gently caressed the bracelet, feeling its warmth. She couldn't help but turn her gaze toward Limeau's back. She couldn't help but think back to the first time she had met Liemo. At that time Xuanhuan had still been an ugly girl, unloved by her father and unloved by her grandmother. All she had was a venomous body and a reborn soul filled with hatred. But now she had a sister, a friend, and a man who treated her with sincerity. Even though Xuanhuan's heart was still a mess, even though she wasn't in a comfortable environment, she still felt a sudden sense of peace and happiness. At this moment Xuanhuan still felt a sudden sense of calm and a faint sense of joy. As if sensing Xuanhuan's gaze, Liemo turned to look at her. How's your cultivation going? Liemo asked. I've fully recovered and I can kill 2 more beasts in a row. Xuanhuan smiled. At this moment, a cry for help suddenly came from not far away. Is anyone there? Help. Both Liemo and Xuanhuan frowned slightly. The person calling for help was none other than Guanruliu. At the time, Guanruliu had teamed up with 2 other students from the Southern College. Both of them were peak 6th rank blade masters, and Guanruliu herself was a peak 7th rank blade master. She had begun training in spiritual energy a year earlier, and her combat prowess far exceeded Xuanhuan's and Liemo's. Based on the trio's combat ability, as long as they didn't enter the heart of the forest, they shouldn't be in much danger. She must have encountered something that caused her to call for help. Who's calling for help? Zhuifeng had also woken up by then. It's senior sister Guan, let's go take a look. Xuanhuan stood up, and the 3 of them rushed in the direction of the voice. Less than half a kilometer away, the 3 of them arrived in an area filled with miasma. Liemo immediately told Zhuifeng and Xuanhuan to hold their breaths. Because of their spiritual vortices, the 3 of them could hold their breaths for a certain period of time. This miasma doesn't seem naturally formed, Zhuifeng commented. Rather, it seems man-made. Zhuifeng had been in and out of the forest since he was a child, and he was quite familiar with miasma. He knew that any miasma would be poisonous. However, natural miasma would carry with it a certain amount of water vapor that would evaporate from the ground, and the miasma surrounding the 3 of them was very dry. It really is man-made. Everyone be careful, Xuanhuan whispered. Someone's looking for trouble. Liemo didn't make a sound, but his brows were furrowed. He had already warned all the students that the purpose of this trial was to increase their cultivation and accumulate combat experience, and that they weren't to attack the other students. He had split the students into groups of 3, and tried his best to avoid putting those who were at odds with each other in the same group. This was because he was worried that having too many people in a group would lead to conflict, and that existing conflicts would escalate into a fight. Who would have thought that there would still be people who dared to disobey the precepts? They must be courting death. Senior sister Guan, where are you? Xuanhuan called out to her surroundings. Xuanhuan, I'm here. Come and save us. Guanruliu's voice rang out once more, weak and devoid of spiritual energy. We're coming, Xuanhuan hurriedly replied. Together with Zhuifeng and Liemo, she walked toward the area where the miasma was the thickest. After passing through the layers of miasma, Xuanhuan finally saw Guanruliu. At the moment, she was suspended in midair by a large patch of coiled vines. It was already night time and the coiled vines were black as ink. They were stacked on top of each other, intertwining with each other. It was a particularly eerie and terrifying sight. Senior sister Guan, are you all right? Xuanhuan hurriedly asked. She wanted to walk closer, but she found that she was completely covered in vines, and there wasn't a single place for her to step. Zhuifeng also drew his bow, but he didn't dare to act rashly because he didn't know what was going on. Oh, I'm fine, Guanruliu replied weakly. But my 2 juniors have been swallowed by the vines. Xuanhuan looked at the vines all over the ground, but she couldn't see a single person. The 2 juniors were both students of the Southern College and they were on good terms with Xuanhuan. Xuanhuan was quite worried about their safety. Xuanhuan turned to look at Liemo. What do we do now? Stay here and don't move, Liemo instructed. Then a green light rose from his feet as he flew toward Guanruliu. Liemo stretched out 2 fingers, and white spiritual energy gathered at his fingertips. With a flash of white light, the vines broke and Guanruliu landed in Liemo's arms. Master Emo, the pale-faced Guanruliu finally relaxed a little in front of Liemo. But just as Guanruliu was about to relax, something unexpected happened. Liemo, be careful. Xuanhuan exclaimed. Behind Liemo, beneath his feet, to his sides, and even above his head, countless vines had raised their heads and were glaring at Liemo, as if countless venomous snakes were sticking out their tongues, ready to pounce on Liemo at any moment. Chapter 261. Catch. Liemo called out to Zhuifeng. He raised his hand and tossed Guanruliu toward him. Feng reacted quickly and caught Guanruliu. At the same time he heard Yun Ruoyan's cry of alarm. Mo, be careful. The countless vines surrounding Mo suddenly attacked him at the same time. In the blink of an eye, Mo was completely surrounded. Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but think of the wild vine spirit they had encountered in the half-cliff cave in the Imperial territory. Those wild vine spirits could suck away a person's spiritual energy, and as long as they couldn't find the true body of the wild vine spirit, they wouldn't be able to kill it. The vines in front of them were most likely similar to those wild vine spirits, and they were many times more powerful than the wild vine spirits they had encountered in the Imperial territory. Those wild vines suck away a person's spiritual energy, Guanruliu muttered from within Feng's arms. Guanruliu forced herself to speak from within Feng's arms. Her words confirmed Yun Ruoyan's suspicions. At this time, Mo was completely wrapped up in the wild vines, and the surrounding vines were still surging towards him. The ball of vines was growing larger and larger. Yun Ruoyan saw that the vines weren't attacking her or Feng, but rather Mo. She guessed that Mo's powerful spiritual energy had attracted the vines to him. Thinking of this, Yun Ruoyan immediately threw a fireball at the depths of the wild vines. Feng placed Guanruliu behind him in a safe spot, then used a wood-attuned spiritual technique to attack the vines together with Yun Ruoyan. And then boom, boom, boom. Yun Ruoyan kept throwing fireballs at the vines. The vines that came into contact with the fireballs were instantly charred, but the small patch that had been charred was quickly filled up by other vines. Yun Ruoyan's fireballs didn't seem to have much effect on the vines. Feng tried to use the wild vine technique to control the wild vines, but it was clear that his cultivation was not enough. Not only were the vines not under his control, but they were also attacking him. Feng could only use his bowstring to continuously slash the wild vines to protect himself and Guanruliu behind him. Yun Ruoyan and Feng's attacks had successfully drawn the attention of some of the wild vines, but the number of vines surrounding Mo continued to increase. Yun Ruoyan watched as Mo's rattan ball continued to grow larger and larger, and it continued to spin. She didn't know what Mo's condition was and she grew more and more anxious. No longer caring about the danger, Yun Ruoyan threw fireballs at the vines in front of her, carving out a path for herself as she ran toward the vines. Ruoyan, danger. Feng shouted from behind her. Feng, protect senior sister Guan. Yun Ruoyan turned to Feng. Yun Ruoyan didn't rush toward the ball of wild vines on a whim. As she ran, she observed her surroundings, searching for any traces of her true form. Suddenly, she saw a huge tree about 4 to 5 feet behind the ball of wild vines. That huge tree was completely wrapped in wild vines. At the roots of the tree, several extremely thick and sturdy wild vines slithered about like giant pythons. As Yun Ruoyan dealt with the vines that were attacking her with fireballs, her gaze followed the python-like vines all the way down until she finally discovered where they were growing. It was a patch of damp soil from which the thick vines had sprouted. At first, the area had been covered by the stacked vines, but now that most of the vines had gathered around the ball of wild vines, the area where the vines were growing was exposed. Yun Ruoyan repeatedly used fireballs to repel the vines around her, then pulled out her dark steel dagger and leaped toward where the vines were growing. Yun Ruoyan could see that the thick vines were all branches of a single main vine, and that the main vine was as thick as 2 pythons. It had emerged from the wetlands and it was as thick as 2 large pythons. Yun Ruoyan swung her dagger at the main vine, but what she didn't expect was that the main vine was not only thick, but also incredibly hard. Even though her dark steel dagger could cut through metal like it was mud, it only managed to leave a shallow cut on the vine. Yun Ruoyan looked at the ball of vines that was now the size of a house, but Mo didn't react in the slightest. Mo was intentionally releasing spiritual energy from his body, hoping to draw all the vines toward him so that he could kill them all in one fell swoop. Yun Ruoyan didn't know any of this, but she was more nervous and afraid than she had ever been before. As she screamed Mo's name, she slashed at the vines with her dagger. Once, twice, thrice. Yun Ruoyan didn't even notice that the vines were slowly wrapping around her own body. When Mo heard Yun Ruoyan's screams, he wanted to end the battle quickly, so he began to release all his spiritual energy. Attracted by the spiritual energy, the vines began to give up on attacking Feng, and even the vines that had wrapped around Yun Ruoyan retreated. In an instant, apart from the main vine that had grown out of the wetlands, almost all of the vine's branches rushed toward the ball of vines. The sphere became even bigger and was still growing. Countless vines were twisting around it, making it look quite terrifying. Yun Ruoyan was still slashing at the main vine with her dark steel dagger. Without the vines attacking her, Zhuifeng had a chance to run to her side. Zhuifeng used his bowstring to chop at the vine's trunk, but even the sharpest bowstring didn't have any effect. Moreover, Zhuifeng could see that the ball of vines was still growing in size, and it was already closing in on the two of them. Ruoyan, it's dangerous here. Zhuifeng reached out to grab Yin Ruoyan. Let's get out of here. Yin Ruoyan didn't seem to hear Zhuifeng's words, and she continued to stare at the vine's trunk. Ruoyan, let's get out of here. Zhuifeng grabbed Yin Ruoyan's hand anxiously. Don't pull me. Yin Ruoyan yelled at Zhuifeng. Don't pull me. I want to save Liemo, I want to save him. The slaughtering king's so strong he'll be fine. Zhuifeng grabbed Yin Ruoyan by the waist and forcefully dragged her away. Let go of me, Zhuifeng, let go of me. Yin Ruoyan shouted. As soon as the two of them left the nest of vines, the indescribably large ball of vines began to change. Liemo had begun to attack. Inside the ball of vines, he heard Yin Ruoyan's screams and decided not to wait any longer. Zhuifeng and Yin Ruoyan saw that the ball of vines seemed to have been propped up by something, and it suddenly began to distort its original shape. Zhuifeng stopped and put Yin Ruoyan down, and the two of them stared at the ball of vines. As the ball of vines grew larger and larger, the vines wrapped around it seemed to have gone berserk, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws as they tried to escape. With a loud bang, the ball of vines finally exploded, sending vines flying in all directions. Zhuifeng helped Yin Ruoyan block the incoming vines with his bow. Yin Ruoyan finally saw Liemo standing in the middle of the ball of vines. Liemo! Yin Ruoyan called out to him. Liemo only had time to nod at Yin Ruoyan. Suddenly, there was a loud shriek as the vine's main body was jolted out of the ground by a violent tremor. The three of them looked in that direction and saw that the thick vine was actually connected to a humanoid monster. A vine demon. Yin Ruoyan couldn't help but exclaim. Everyone on the Xuanhuan continent knew that demons were many times more powerful than spirits. The vine demon in front of them was covered in wet soil, and its head was still attached to the thick vine. It had a head, an upper body and 2 arms, but its lower body was connected to countless vines. It was clearly a half-demon that hadn't fully matured yet. The vine demon's eyes, like 2 black holes, scanned Yin Ruoyan and Zhuifeng's bodies, then landed on Zhuifeng. Zhuifeng's eyes flashed, and the vine demon trembled in fear. It then dove back into the wetlands trying to escape. However, Liemo yanked on the vine that was attached to the vine demon's head, and it howled once more as it was dragged back to the ground. Trying to escape? Liemo tightened his grip on the vine demon's head. Die. Seeing the killing intent in Liemo's eyes, the vine demon waved its hand and cut off the vine on its head, escaping Liemo's control. As soon as it landed on the ground, it burrowed into the wet soil like an earthworm. You're courting death. Liemo roared again as he appeared above the vine demon on his sword. The vine demon's movements were also very fast. By the time Liemo arrived, the last of its vines had already sunk into the ground. Upon seeing this, Liemo leaped down from the sword. This time the sword didn't disappear but hovered properly in mid-air. Liemo stood on the wetlands, where the vine half-demon had burrowed its way into. He pointed a finger at the azure sword, and it let out a shrill cry as it dove into the wetlands in response to Liemo's finger. Immediately afterwards the ground shook, and the vine half-monster let out a muffled shriek. Liemo directed the sword to burrow out of the ground, which pierced through the vine demon's body and brought it out of the wetlands. Liemo put away the sword, and the vine demon landed on the ground, trembling as it begged for its life. Liemo didn't hesitate to release a fireball technique. A giant fireball engulfed the vine demon, and in a few moments the vine demon was reduced to ashes. Yin Ruoyan stood behind Zhuifeng, seemingly unable to react. Yin'er. Liemo turned to Yin Ruoyan and smiled as he extended a hand. Only then did Yin Ruoyan recover from her shock. Liemo, are you alright? Yin Ruoyan walked up to Liemo and looked up at him. Yin'er. Liemo caressed Yin Ruoyan's cheek and smiled. How could anything happen to me? It's just that this half-demon is far too cunning. If I didn't show it a little weakness, it would have escaped immediately. Chapter 262. Liemo's smile widened as he looked at Yin Ruoyan's reddened eyes. But Yin-er, I really like seeing you worry about me. Looking at his smiling face, Yin Ruoyan couldn't help but feel an inexplicable anger rise from the bottom of her heart. She reached out and slapped Liemo's hand away. You. Yin Ruoyan glared at Liemo, but she didn't know how to put her anger into words. She suddenly felt foolish. Liemo was the slaughtering king. How could the slaughtering king, whose name shook the entire Xuanhuan continent, be harmed by a mere vine spirit? But even though Yun Ruoyan had always been able to remain calm in the face of danger, upon seeing Li Mo in danger, she had completely lost her ability to judge. Anxiety and fear, which he had never felt before, surged up at the same time. But now, seeing Li Mo standing in front of her, all her nervousness and fear transformed into an inexplicable anger that she didn't know how to vent. Seeing her angry expression, Li Mo reached out and pulled her into his embrace. "Silly girl, I'm fine. On the Xuanhuan continent there aren't many things that can harm me." Tears began to gather in Yun Ruoyan's large eyes, and finally, 2 crystalline teardrops dripped down her cheeks. "Li Mo, promise me that you'll never let anything happen to me, alright?" Yun Ruoyan whispered in Li Mo's arms. "Alright, I promise you," Li Mo replied seriously. Not far away, Zhui Feng turned his gaze elsewhere when he saw the two of them hugging. Inadvertently, his gaze fell on 2 protruding spots in the pile of vines. Zhui Feng saw that those protruding spots looked very humanoid and he walked over. After Li Mo had killed the vine spirit, all the vines in the area had withered, leaving only a pile of withered twigs on the ground. The 2 human figures were hidden beneath the withered twigs. Zhui Feng walked forward and used the bough in his hand to pry open the branches, only to see 2 people lying on the ground. "They're here," Zhui Feng called out. Li Mo and Yun Ruoyan walked over. Zhui Feng didn't recognize the 2 of them, but Yun Ruoyan did. They were Guan Ruliu's companions. Zhui Feng reached out his hand to check their breathing. Seeing that they were still alive, he reached out his hand to check their necks. His brows furrowed. All of their spiritual energy has been absorbed by the vine spirit, and their spiritual vortices have also been damaged. I'm afraid they won't be able to keep their cultivation. Yun Ruoyan and Zhui Feng both looked grave. The surrounding miasma was indeed man-made, and they couldn't be sure who had harmed Guan Ruliu and her companions before they were. Zhui Feng and Li Mo each carried the 2 students out of the vine spirit's nest. Guan Ruliu's condition was much better than the 2 unconscious students. Although she had lost almost all of her spiritual energy, her spiritual vortex hadn't been damaged, and it wouldn't be difficult for her to recover after some rest. Li Mo handed Yun Ruoyan a quintessence elixir, which Yun Ruoyan fed to Guan Ruliu. With Yun Ruoyan's help, Guan Ruliu was able to stand up. By this time the sky was completely dark. Because of the 3 injured students, Yun Ruoyan and her companions couldn't go to higher ground to rest. They could only find a more secluded place to rest. After settling the 3 injured students down, Zhui Feng started a fire. After a short rest, Guan Ruliu's pale face regained some color. Yun Ruoyan handed her some roasted meat and she forced herself to eat it all. "Senior Sister Guan, how did you end up in the vine spirit's nest?" Yun Ruoyan asked. "Although I don't have any evidence, I'm certain that Rong Yueshan and the others were the culprits," Guan Ruliu suddenly declared angrily. "Rong Yueshan, Yi Qianying, Pei Zio, Guan Tianyu, and 2 other students from the Northern College have formed a team. Indeed, they're all birds of the same feather," Yun Ruoyan muttered angrily. As soon as she had discovered the miasma, she had suspected that it was the culprit. But she couldn't think of a motive for these people to harm Guan Ruliu at the moment. "How can you be certain that Rong Yueshan and the others were the culprits?" Li Mo countered. As the leader of this trial and the instructor of Kongming Academy, he needed concrete evidence. "Yesterday we encountered them on the road. I didn't want to get involved with them, so I took a different path with my 2 juniors," Guan Ruliu began. "But in the middle of the night, I suddenly heard the voices of a man and a woman talking. When I woke up, I found that I was surrounded by miasma." Although she hadn't seen them, the voices sounded like Rong Yueshan and Guan Tianyu. Yun Ruoyan frowned slightly. "Did you hear what Rong Yueshan said?" Guan Ruliu thought for a moment. "I think I heard them say that they wanted to use us to harm someone, but I didn't hear who exactly." Yun Ruoyan and Zhui Feng exchanged a glance, both of them having a rough idea of what was going on. Rong Yueshan, Guan Tianyu, Yi Qianying, and Pei Zio. There was no one else they wanted to harm other than Yun Ruoyan. "When I woke up, I found that the miasma surrounding me was poisonous, and I'd already breathed in some of it in my sleep. Fortunately, my cultivation is relatively high. Even if I breathed in some of the poisonous gas, I could still move." However, the 2 junior brothers immediately fell unconscious. Guan Ruliu glanced at the 2 students from the Southern College who had woken up after being rescued, and Yun Ruoyan had fed each of them a life quintessence pill. Although their lives were no longer in danger, according to Li Mo, it was likely that the cultivation they had accumulated over the years would be at risk. Because they were so weak, they had both fallen asleep. I wanted to bring my 2 juniors out of the miasma, so I headed toward the area where it was thinner, Guanruliu continued. As a result, we unknowingly entered the wild vine demon's lair. As soon as the wild vines touched our bodies, they began to absorb the spiritual energy in our bodies. We didn't have the ability to resist. My 2 juniors were swallowed whole, and I was hung upside down for a day and a night. Just when I thought I was going to die, you guys finally showed up. Guanruliu's heart was still pounding. Xuanhuan reached out to hold her hand and comforted her. Senior Sister Guan, we're fine now. In the darkness of the night, 6 dark figures darted through the forest. When they reached the miasma, the 4 of them stopped. Sister Yi, let's get rid of the miasma, Rong Yueshan called out to Yi Qianying. These 6 people were none other than Yi Qianying, Rong Yueshan, Pei Zio, Guan Tianyu, and a male and female student from the Northern College. The lanky male student was called Song Yi, and the beady-eyed female student was called Sun Yen. All right, Yi Qianying replied Yi Qianying. After that, she took out some medicinal powder from her pouch. She then turned to Song Yi and Lin Feng and said, Song fellow disciple, Sun fellow disciple, please help me. The 2 of them nodded and said, no problem. Song Yi flicked the packet of medicinal powder in Yi Qianying's hands, and a spark flew from his fingertip into the powder. The powder didn't ignite upon meeting the spark. Instead, a white, odorless smoke rose. Sun Yen extended her fair and slender jade-like hands, and lightly fanned the smoke coming out of the powder. A gentle breeze rose from her palms, bringing the smoke into the miasma. When the miasma met the white, odorless smoke, the 2 sides converged and disappeared. When the miasma completely disappeared, the 6 of them quickly made their way back to the wild vine nest. When they saw the withered vines in front of them, they weren't surprised. Third uncle was right. This half-demon really isn't a match for the slaughtering king, Rong Yueshan said. The third uncle she was referring to was Rong Tianhai. Master Rong said that Master Mo's already a peak 9th rank blade master, and is infinitely close to becoming a sword saint, Guan Tianyu explained. The vine half-demon is only a peak 8th rank blade master, and its body is extremely fragile. Once it's caught, it won't be able to fight back. Master Mo is ruthless. As soon as he catches the vine half-demon, he'll definitely kill it. Because of the presence of the miasma, he'll definitely leave as soon as he saves the victim. Yi Qianying continued, Master Rong's foresight is truly divine. Guan Tianyu laughed. Because he was in such a hurry to save the victim and killed the vine half-demon, there's no way he'll find anything left behind. Let's look around. As soon as Guan Tianyu finished speaking, the 6 of them began to comb through the area. After the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn, Pei Zio found the place where the half-demon's main body was hiding. Pei Zio pushed aside the thick, withered vines and saw that the wetland below was glowing with a faint green light. Here it is. Pei Zio called out, and the other 5 quickly surrounded him. This is it, Rong Yueshan said. Under the illumination of the green fluorescent light, the faces of the 6 people present all lit up. Be careful, don't scare it and don't let it escape, Guan Tianyu said carefully, crouching down. Then the 6 of them formed a circle around the fluorescent wetland, and all of them bent down. Guan Tianyu gestured to the other 5, and they all held their breaths as they watched Guan Tianyu's movements. He took out a dagger and a golden rope that looked like a headband from his waist. Guan Tianyu gently dug into the wetland with the dagger, and before long he had dug out a jade-green root. Everyone's eyes lit up, and Guan Tianyu carefully continued to dig along the root. Be careful everyone, it's coming out, Guan Tianyu said softly as he dug. Not long after he finished speaking, a jade-green light suddenly shot out of the ground. The 6 of them reached out to cover it, but the green light was blocked. It turned and tried to burrow back into the wetland, but Guan Tianyu's red rope was already tied into a knot, waiting for it. The green fluorescent light drilled into the buckle. Guan Tianyu stretched out his hand and pulled the buckle, tightly fastening the little thing that was emitting fluorescent light. Got it. Guan Tianyu stood up excitedly, holding the red rope in his hand. Everyone's eyes turned to the thing tied to the red rope. Chapter 263. The thing tied to the rope was as thick as 2 thumbs. It had the appearance of a human infant, its body translucent and glowing with a green light. Coincidentally, the red rope was wrapped around its slender neck, and Guan Tianyu was holding the other end of the rope in his hand. The baby, who was not much bigger than a thumb, stuck out his tongue and stared at the people around him with his small eyes. Is this the spirit treasure that Master Rong was talking about? Yi Qianying asked. A spirit treasure could be understood as a descendant of a demon. After a demon's death, it would inherit its strength and abilities. As long as the demon wasn't dead, the spirit treasure wouldn't be able to grow. Its intelligence was only equivalent to that of a 2- or 3-year-old child. Once the demon died, however, the spirit treasure would grow rapidly gaining the demon's strength and abilities. Not every Yao could have their own children, and the Yao of the Xuanhuan continent were a rather heaven-defying existence. After a human or an animal with spiritual energy died, its spirit would attach itself to another animal or plant and continue to exist in the world. Because of their heaven-defying nature, it was very rare for demons to have their own descendants. Especially for wild vine demigods that had yet to fully transform into demons, it was even rarer to have their own descendants. The spirit treasure's intelligence was only equivalent to that of a 2- or 3-year-old child's, so it was very easy to tame. If one could capture the spirit treasure and kill it, then make it recognize them as its master, it would be equivalent to owning a powerful killing weapon. 2 months ago, Rong Tianhai had brought a group of students from the Northern College into the forest for a trial, and they'd stumbled upon the spirit treasure playing outside. The little thing was extremely alert, and at the same time that Rong Tianhai discovered it, the spirit treasure had discovered Rong Tianhai as well. Rong Tianhai had chased it all the way until he discovered the wild vine demon's existence. In order to obtain this demon treasure, Rong Tianhai had fought against the vine half-demon. However, with Rong Tianhai's cultivation base, he wasn't a match for the vine half-demon. In the end, he could only return in defeat. However, Rong Tianhai had made a mental note of this half-demon and its treasures. When Liemo had suggested entering the forest, Rong Tianhai had already come up with a plan to use Liemo to kill the half-demon. "Senior Martial Brother Guan, we can't stay here for long." Rong Yueshan looked around and said, "We need to quickly take the demon treasure and leave this place." Guan Tianyu took out a red pouch and placed the demon treasures inside, then tied it to his waist, and the 6 of them hurriedly left. 2.5 miles away, while Rong Yueshan and the others were searching for spirit beasts, Liemo Yunruoyan and the others had already begun to rest. In the middle of the night, Yunruoyan once again heard the rumbling of wild beasts in her dreams. Yunruoyan sat up and saw Liemo and Zhui Yifeng standing not far from her. Guan Ruliu and the other 2 students were too weak and had fallen into a deep sleep, so they didn't notice anything. As the rumbling grew closer and closer, Yunruoyan walked up to Liemo's side and asked, "It's a wild beast passing by. Should we hide?" "No," Liemo replied. "It sounds like it's not far from us, so it won't reach here." Liemo glanced at Yunruoyan, then at Zhui Yifeng. "I'll bring Yin over to take a look at the situation. You stay here and protect the 3 of them." Then Liemo took Yunruoyan on his sword and flew toward the source of the rumbling. Not long after, the 2 stopped on a branch of a huge tree, the rumbling sound of wild beasts on the ground ringing in their ears. Yunruoyan infused a large amount of spiritual energy into her eyes to enhance her night vision, then looked in the direction of the sound. Every tree here was massive and there was a large gap between them. In some places where the canopy wasn't dense enough, the moonlight still managed to penetrate the canopy. Coupled with Yunruoyan's enhanced night vision, she could clearly see a large horde of beasts charging toward her and Liemo from between the giant trees. Yunruoyan had seen a beast stampede in the imperial territory before, and the sight of a large horde of beasts charging at one another had left a deep impression on Yunruoyan. But what she was seeing now had completely changed her impression of such a spectacle. Each of the beasts was so large that it seemed as if the earth itself was shaking as they ran. About 7 or 8 wild beasts dashed past Yunruoyan and Liemo's feet, and one of them accidentally knocked into the tree they were standing on, causing the tree to shake violently. Yunruoyan was prepared. She held onto the tree trunk with one hand and Liemo with the other, so that even if the tree broke, she wouldn't be afraid. The tree only shook for a moment before it regained its footing. Yunruoyan looked down at the beast that had crashed into the tree. It was clearly dizzy from the impact, and after shaking its head a few times, it began to run again. "Where are they going?" Yunruoyan asked Liemo, puzzled. "I've been in this forest twice before. The first time I encountered wild beasts, but the second time I didn't see any," Liemo explained. He told Yunruoyan that there were 2 possible scenarios for a large horde of wild beasts to appear. The first was the birth of a powerful beast, which would then expand its territory and drive away the weaker beasts and beasts. The second was that a treasure was about to be born, and a large horde of beasts would come to snatch it. The weaker beasts and beasts would flee in order to preserve their lives. "Liemo, which scenario do you think it's going to be?" Yunruoyan asked. "It's most likely the second scenario. The heavenly spirit fruit is about to ripen, Liemo murmured. But we'll have to wait for that silly bird to return before we know what's going on. That evening, Liemo sent Emo ahead to scout out the situation, and it was expected to return at daybreak. Just as dawn broke, Emo returned. It perched on Liemo's shoulder and chirped for a while. Yunruoyan didn't understand Emoer's bird language, but Qiuqiu did. Qiuqiu translated Emoer's words for Yunruoyan. Emo told Liemo that it had encountered 3 or 4 groups of wild beasts along the way, and that there were more and more magical beasts among them, and the beasts were of higher and higher levels. Some of them were even more powerful than the others. The deeper they went into the forest, the denser the aura they emitted. Emo said that such a powerful aura could only be released by beasts at the level of a 9th-rank blade master. Moreover, this aura wasn't coming from just one beast, but from several at the same time. The wild beasts and lower-ranked beasts had been intimidated by this powerful aura. Yunruoyan thought back to what Liemo had told her last night. If a powerful beast were to be born, then there could only be a single aura. Now that there were so many of them, it could only be the second possibility that Liemo had mentioned. After hearing Emoer's findings, Liemo made a decision to send Guanruliu and the other 2 students back to the treehouse. Because the 3 of them had lost their teleportation scrolls in the miasma, Liemo had no choice but to send them back on his sword. Fortunately, the 2 students finally woke up early in the morning, and Liemo sent them back in 2 separate batches. Liemo first sent the 2 weaker students, then returned to pick up Guanruliu. It's a pity that I've only been here for a few days and I'm already injured. I won't be able to continue training with the 3 of you, Guanruliu sighed as she leaned against the trunk of a large tree. After a night of recuperation, Guanruliu's cultivation had returned to 5th rank, but she was still far from her original 8th rank. As a 5th rank blade master, he could, with some difficulty, continue the training with Yunruoyan's group. However, the 2 students from the Southern College had already lost their cultivation, and they were now mere commoners. Without anyone to look after them, they would never survive in the forest. Senior sister, don't be discouraged, Yunruoyan consoled. This time, there'll be more than one dimension. Once you've recovered your cultivation, we'll head to another dimension together for training. As the 2 of them spoke, Zhuifeng suddenly made a shushing gesture, and the 2 of them fell silent. Suddenly they heard the sound of footsteps. A short while later, 6 people walked out from the direction the sound had come from. What a coincidence to run into you here. Guan Tianyu, who was walking at the front of the group, smiled. Indeed, Rong Yueshan replied. Beside Guan Tianyu, Rong Yueshan laughed as well. The forest of giant trees is so big, it's truly a coincidence that we ran into each other. Guanruliu stood up and glared at them. Why are you following us? Do you want to harm us again? Senior sister Guan, why would you say something like that? Yichening pretended to be confused. Have we ever harmed you? Do you dare to say that we haven't? Guanruliu and her 2 junior brothers could be considered to have escaped from death. Her 2 junior brothers' cultivation had been crippled, and her own cultivation had also greatly regressed. She had no choice but to end this trial, and the 3 of them had almost lost their lives. If not for Yunruoyan holding her back, Guanruliu's heart would have been filled with rage. Had it not been for Yunruoyan holding her back, she would have charged forward and attacked them. No matter who it was, they would not be able to remain calm after seeing the person who had harmed them appear in front of them as if nothing had happened. Senior sister Guan, Guan Tianyu continued. Guan Tianyu continued, as a senior of Kongming Academy, how could you slander your juniors? I'm sure you know full well whether I'm slandering them or not, Guanruliu replied, suppressing her anger. What a joke. As long as there's no evidence, it's slander. You. Guanruliu was furious. Yunruoyan squeezed her hand and whispered in her ear, there are 6 of them right now and we're no match for them. Once Master Emo returns, he'll give you justice. When Guanruliu heard this, she forcefully suppressed the anger in her heart. She shifted her gaze away from them and didn't say anything else. However, Rong Yueshan and the others were clearly here to cause trouble. When they saw that Guanruliu wasn't saying anything, they asked, Senior sister Guan, why are there only the 3 of you? Where did your 2 junior brothers and Master Emo go? Chapter 264. What are you trying to do? Zhuifeng, who had been silent all this time, suddenly stood in front of Yunruoyan and Guanruliu. We're not trying to do anything. We're all from the same sect and we're just concerned about each other. Guan Tianyu glanced sideways at Zhuifeng. We don't need your concern. Please leave immediately. Zhuifeng said rudely. We'll leave just because you tell us to. Who gave you such a big mouth? Pei Zio laughed coldly. Pei Zio. Yun Ruoyan finally spoke up. Don't say I didn't warn you, but Master Mo said not to kill each other. If you know what's good for you, stay away from us. Otherwise, even if it's 3 against 6, you might not be a match for them. Yun Ruoyan wasn't boasting. She still had a trump card up her sleeve. Yun Ruoyan stared straight at Pei Zio. Pei Zio, who hadn't interacted with Yun Ruoyan in a long time, felt a little intimidated by her glare. Yun Ruoyan's eyes were filled with hatred and resentment. Pei Zio had never understood where Yun Ruoyan's hatred for him came from. He tried to figure it out, and he'd even tried to get closer to Yun Ruoyan. But how could a grudge left over from a previous life be so easily resolved? Finally, after Yun Ruoyan knocked him off the cliff, Pei Zio completely gave up on trying to improve their relationship. From then on, to Pei Zio, Yun Ruoyan's existence was irreconcilable. Right now, Yun Ruoyan was looking at Zhuo Yifeng the same way she had when she knocked him off the cliff, as if she wanted to take his life. Pei Zio was still puzzled as to why Yun Ruoyan hated him. However, he knew that perhaps this mystery would never be solved, or perhaps there was no answer to it at all. Because sometimes you don't need a reason to hate a person. If you don't want to cause trouble, you'd better leave immediately. Yun Ruoyan continued coldly. If you want to cause trouble, we don't mind playing along. What a joke. This forest doesn't belong to your family, so we can go wherever we want, Xianxia said indifferently. 3 against 6? Interesting. Guan Qianyu chuckled. He knew that Yun Ruoyan and Zhuo Yifeng had decent cultivations, but at the same time he also knew that Guan Ruliu was injured and would definitely be a burden. On the other hand, the 6 of them were unscathed, and their cultivations were not low either. If Guan Ruliu hadn't been injured, with the help of an 8th-rank blade master, they might have been able to take on 3 of them, but in this situation Yun Ruoyan was far too arrogant. I really want to give it a try, Guan Qianyu said with a mocking tone. Zhuo Yifeng had always been a straightforward person. The 6 people in front of him were obviously here to cause trouble. Before Yun Ruoyan could open her mouth again, Zhuo Yifeng had already taken out his bow and arrows and drawn them into a crescent shape, his gaze piercing as he stared at the 6 of them. What do you think you're doing, kid from the Central College? Song Yi, who was tall and skinny, stepped in front of Guan Qianyu. Song Yi and Sun Yen were 2 of the strongest cultivators in the Northern College, and they were adept at teamwork. During this training, the 2 of them had received orders from the 2nd elder to protect Guan Qianyu. As Zhuo Yifeng drew his bow, he growled, "You'd better not provoke us. This bow doesn't have eyes." Yi Qianying, Pei Zio, and Rong Yueshan had all seen Zhuo Yifeng's swordsmanship before, and when they saw him draw his bow, they couldn't help but take a step back. Guan Qianyu, Song Yi, and the beady-eyed Sun Yen didn't know how powerful Zhuo Yifeng's arrows were. Song Yi snorted coldly. A piece of trash from the Central College dares to be so arrogant? These new students really need a lesson, Guan Qianyu commented. It's one thing for the Southern College to be so arrogant, but even the trash from the Central College dares to bare their fangs and brandish their claws at me? Last time you teamed up to embarrass me in front of everyone. If I don't take this opportunity to teach you a lesson, who knows how arrogant you'll become. The last time Zhuo Yifeng had injured Guan Qianyu with a flurry of flying needles in order to help Yun Ruoyan, Guan Qianyu had remembered him ever since. However, he hadn't had a chance to exact his revenge. Now that Li Mo wasn't around and Yun Ruoyan's group was outnumbered, it was the perfect opportunity for him to exact his revenge. However, the last time Yun Ruoyan and Zhuo Yifeng had teamed up, they had put him in a difficult position, and he was a little wary of Li Mo's warning. When he'd attacked Guan Ruliu and the others, he'd done so discreetly that he hadn't left any evidence behind. This time, however, he'd openly provoked them while Li Mo wasn't around. If things got out of hand, Li Mo wouldn't pursue the matter either, so Guan Qianyu didn't make a move immediately. Senior brother Guan, you don't have to personally teach a piece of trash from the Central College a lesson. I'll do it myself, Song Yi volunteered. At this moment, Song Yi volunteered. He took a step forward as if he was going to teach Zhuo Yifeng a lesson. You're right, I don't have to personally deal with a piece of trash. Junior brother Song, I'll leave it to you. Guan Qianyu was glad that someone had stepped forward. As Song Yi spoke, he glanced at Sun Yen, who stood by his side. Sun Yen understood, and she extended her hands toward Zhuo Yifeng. Her hands were surprisingly good-looking. Sun Yan's slender, jade-like hands crossed in front of each other and made a flying gesture. A faintly discernible gust of wind followed her gesture and blew towards Zhuo Yifeng. Yun Ruoyan, who was standing behind Zhuo Yifeng, also felt this gust of wind. She couldn't help but raise her guard, but strangely, it didn't seem to contain any offensive power. Just as the three of them were wondering what was going on, Yunruoyan suddenly saw Song Yi clench his hands together and flick them in their direction. Two visible sparks flew out from his fingertips. Sun Yin continued fanning herself with her hand. When the two sparks from Song Yi's flick came into contact with the wind, they suddenly burst into flames with a loud bang. A large ball of fire suddenly burst forth, bringing with it scorching heat as it flew toward the three of them. Zhuo Yifeng had been drawing his bow with both hands, and he hadn't noticed Song Yi's movements. As a result, he was caught off guard by the sudden burst of fire. Yun Ruoyan, on the other hand, was quick to react. She threw a fireball at the ball of fire, and when the two balls of fire collided, there was another loud explosion. Yun Ruoyan's fireball was a combination of wind and fire, but it was still slightly weaker than the resulting flames. However, it was still able to block most of the flames, and it bought the three of them some time to retreat. Zhuo Yifeng took 2 or 3 steps back in order to avoid being roasted by the flames. At the same time, he let go of the bowstring he had drawn. Ah! A man's pain cry rang out. "Senior brother?" A woman's voice followed. Only when the flames had completely dissipated did Yun Ruoyan's trio see the situation in front of them. On the ground opposite them, Song Yi lay in Sun Yan's arms, an arrow shot by Zhuo Yifeng in his chest. The arrow that Zhuo Yifeng had unintentionally shot out just now had actually hit the thin and tall Song Yi, and it had even hit a vital point in his chest. "You." Song Yi lay in Sun Yan's arms, pointing a finger at Zhuo Yifeng as he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. "Senior brother, are you all right?" Sun Yin hugged Song Yi tightly, and she was on the verge of tears. Song Yi opened his mouth and spat out another mouthful of blood. Zhuo Yifeng's archery was incredible, and the two of them had been so close to each other. Even an unintentional shot was enough to take Song Yi's life. Song Yi couldn't finish his sentence. His eyes rolled back into his head and he died. "Senior brother." Sun Yin cried out in agony. On the surface the two of them were brother and sister, but in reality they were a couple. Naturally, Sun Yin wouldn't let the matter rest. She put Song Yi down from her arms, stood up and screamed at Zhuo Yifeng, "I'll kill you." Zhuo Yifeng hadn't intentionally shot Song Yi, but if the latter had threatened his life, he would have killed him without hesitation. As a result, Zhuo Yifeng had no intention of explaining himself. "If you want revenge, I'll keep you company. Come." As soon as Zhuo Yifeng finished speaking, Sun Yan's body suddenly blurred, and she disappeared without a trace. Everyone was stunned by this scene. What's going on? Why did senior sister Sun suddenly disappear? Yi Qianying, half hidden behind Pei Zio, exclaimed. Suddenly, disappeared? Rong Yueshan was also shocked. Yun Ruoyan and Guan Ruliu immediately rushed to Zhuo Yifeng's side. The three of them stood back to back, forming a tight defensive formation. Senior sister Sun is one of the best wind-attuned cultivators in the Northern College, Guan Tianyu began, his tone smug as if he were watching a good show unfold. She can already use the wind-attuned spiritual energy in the air to conceal herself. She didn't attack all this time because she wanted to spare your lives, but you actually killed Song Yi. This time we won't even need to act. She alone will be enough to kill all of you. Prepare to die. Everyone be careful. Guan Ruliu cautiously looked around. Sun Yan's cultivation doesn't allow her to conceal herself for long. Be careful, don't give her a chance to escape. She'll appear very soon. Over there. Indeed, Yun Ruoyan saw a figure flash in front of her, then vanish again. Not good. Guan Ruliu exclaimed. Although her cultivation isn't high enough to conceal herself for long, she's using her speed to make up for the time needed to conceal herself again. She's too fast and we won't be able to catch her at all. Just then Zhuo Yifeng's bow-wielding arm was suddenly cut open by Sun Yin, and fresh blood gushed out. Chapter 265. Sun Yin had successfully ambushed Zhuo Yifeng by concealing herself. Then Yun Ruoyan saw her figure flicker not far from Zhuo Yifeng, as if she was about to launch another sneak attack on him. Zhuo Yifeng, be careful. Yun Ruoyan warned as she threw a fireball in her direction. Sun Yan's attempt to launch another sneak attack was thwarted by Yun Ruoyan. She reappeared some distance away from the three of them, a dagger in her hand that was still stained with Zhuo Yifeng's blood. She glared at Yun Ruoyan with her beady eyes. I only want to take Zhuo Yifeng's life to avenge my senior brother. The two of you had better not interfere. Speaking of revenge, I also have a score to settle with you. Guan Ruliu replied coldly. You want to kill the three of us? I'm afraid it won't be so easy. All right, in that case I'll kill all three of you at once, Sun Yin declared viciously. That way my senior brother won't be lonely on his way to the Yellow Springs. As soon as she finished speaking, Sun Yin disappeared once more. This time it was Guanruliu who was injured. A deep gash appeared on the back of her right hand. Flying needles. Zhui Yifeng sent a large swarm of sharp flying leaves at Guanruliu's side. Sun Yin had been injured by the flying leaves, revealing her true form. Fireball technique. As soon as Sun Yin revealed her true form, Yun Ruoyan released an enormous fireball at her. As Sun Yin dodged the flying needles, she couldn't dodge Yun Ruoyan's fireball in time, and the fireball flew straight at her. Sun Yan's reaction was also extremely fast. Her beautiful hands made a beautiful gesture, and a gust of wind appeared in her hands, fanning towards the fireball. The fireball was blown off course by the gust of wind and brushed past Sun Yan's hair. A series of crackling sounds could be heard as the flame ignited a few strands of Sun Yan's hair. You're courting death. Sun Yan's eyes were bloodshot, and her killing intent surged. Senior brother Guan. Rong Yueshan, who had been watching the show from the sidelines, leaned over to Guan Tianyu's side. Why don't we take this opportunity to? Rong Yueshan made a killing gesture with her hand. Guan Tianyu looked at her, stunned. Although he didn't like Yun Ruoyan and Zhui Yifeng, all he wanted to do was teach them a lesson, not take their lives. However, he was happy to be a bystander and watch others kill the two of them. Let's wait a little longer, Guan Tianyu said. Sun Yan's too powerful, we might not even need to act. Yi Qianying noticed Guan Tianyu's hesitation and said, Senior brother Guan, these three are obviously suspecting us of plotting against Guanruliu and the others. If we let them out alive and report this to the Grand Elder, even if we can't find any concrete evidence, it'll still be troublesome for us. So, we might as well go all the way. Yi Qianying's words struck Guan Tianyu's greatest worry. Fine. If Sun Yin can't kill them, we'll make our move, Guan Tianyu decided. At this moment, Sun Yin, whose eyes were filled with killing intent, put away the dagger in her hand. With a flip of her hand, she took out a thin sword that flickered with silver light. Then, with a flash of her body, she disappeared once again. She's going to use a killing technique. Everyone be careful. Guanruliu warned. Yun Ruoyan held her dagger in one hand and spiritual energy in the other, ready to unleash a fireball at a moment's notice. As Zhui Yifeng held his bow with both hands, he infused spiritual energy into the tiger canine arrowheads. At the moment, Guanruliu was only a 5th-rank blade master, the weakest of the three. Sun Yin was likely to target her first, so Yun Ruoyan and Zhui Yifeng had to focus on protecting her. The three of them nervously defended themselves for quite a while. Sun Yin didn't make a move, but their high concentration would quickly tire them out. In the cold weather, all three of them were sweating profusely. We can't go on like this, Yun Ruoyan murmured. Do you have any ideas? Guanruliu asked. Yun Ruoyan's brain raced. I do, but I'll have to trouble senior sister Guan to act as bait. As Sun Yin concealed herself, she searched for an opportunity to ambush the three of them. She knew that, although the three of them weren't as strong as she was, none of them were easy to deal with. It wouldn't be easy for her to kill the three of them either. All she could do was remain calm and wait for an opportunity to kill them all in one blow. However, the three of them were so well coordinated that Sun Yin couldn't find any openings. Just as Sun Yin was beginning to panic, she noticed a flaw in their plan. Guanruliu, who had been shielded by Yun Ruoyan and Zhui Yifeng the entire time, seemed to have been so nervous that she lost her composure and exposed half of her body. Without hesitation, Sun Yin stepped forward, raised her thin sword, and slashed at Guanruliu's body. Yun Ruoyan's mental energy was being released to its fullest extent. Although she couldn't pinpoint Sun Yan's position, she was able to detect the silver light that shone from Sun Yan's thin sword. Without hesitation, Yun Ruoyan threw out the dark steel dagger in her hand, and at the same time, a fireball shot out. Sun Yin used her silver sword to block Yun Ruoyan's dagger, then used her wind-attuned spiritual energy to block the fireball. Just then, a snow-white arrowhead pierced through the fireball and into Sun Yan's chest. Sun Yin spat out a mouthful of blood. She stared at the arrowhead in disbelief, then slowly collapsed to the ground, dead. They actually killed senior sister Sun. Yi Qianying cried out in shock. Guan Tianyu was also stunned by the sudden turn of events. Sun Yan's cultivation was the same as his, but her cultivation was more secretive. He had sparred with her in the past, but he had never won. Even his grandfather, the second elder, had praised Sun Yin for her prowess as a hunter. The combination of Sun Yin and Song Yi was unparalleled in the Northern College, and even in the entirety of Kongming Academy, they would be considered formidable. That was why the second elder had assigned them to protect Guan Tianyu. but he hadn't expected that both of them would die at Zhuo Yifeng's hands. "Senior brother Guan, what are you waiting for? Let's attack together," Rong Yueshan called out, her heart burning with anxiety. She had already lost the best opportunity to kill Yin Ruoyan, but she still didn't act rashly. Guan Ruhai had warned her before entering the academy that the elders would place great importance on this training. As a result, no matter how much she wanted to kill Yin Ruoyan, she couldn't do it openly. Otherwise, the second elder would be the first to punish her. As a result, she had to do it discreetly and without anyone noticing. But there was one other possibility, provoking Guan Tianyu into attacking her. Guan Tianyu was the second elder's only descendant, and no matter what he did, the second elder would always protect him. As a result, accomplices like her wouldn't be severely punished either. "Senior brother Guan, let's go," Pei Zio and Yi Qianying also called out. "All right, let's go." Guan Tianyu finally couldn't resist the urging of those around him. As soon as he called out, Rong Yueshan, Yi Qianying, and Pei Zio took out their weapons and charged toward Yin Ruoyan's group. Pei Zio's spear stabbed toward Yin Ruoyan without hesitation. Yin Ruoyan's dark steel dagger had fallen into a distant tree, and she had lost her weapon. Fortunately, Yin Ruoyan's reaction was fast enough to dodge Pei Zio's attack. By this time, Rong Yueshan was facing off against Zhuo Yifeng, and Yi Qianying was facing off against Guan Ruliu. Zhuo Yifeng's cultivation had been slightly lower than Rong Yueshan's, but after cultivating a wood-attuned external martial technique, his cultivation had improved tremendously. By now he was able to fight Rong Yueshan without being at a disadvantage. Although Guan Ruliu's cultivation had dropped significantly, it was just enough to deal with Yi Qianying. Although Pei Zio had a weapon in his hands, Yin Ruoyan had used her bracelet to increase her cultivation. Her fireball technique and direct spiritual energy attacks were both much more powerful, and she was able to exchange a few blows with Pei Zio. "Yin Ruoyan, I've always been accommodating to you, but you really don't know what's good for you. Today I'm going to make you pay for this." Pei Zio pointed his spear at Yin Ruoyan, his eyes bloodshot. "Then come at me. Cut the crap." Yin Ruoyan shouted, then threw several fireballs at Pei Zio. After dodging a few of them, Pei Zio turned around and thrust his spear at Yin Ruoyan. Yin Ruoyan bent her waist and the tip of the spear brushed past her face. At this moment, Yin Ruoyan turned her hand and grabbed the spear's tip. A wave of spiritual energy enhanced by her bracelet flowed from Yin Ruoyan's hand to Pei Zio's hands. Pei Zio instantly felt a sharp pain in his hands, which quickly spread throughout his body, as if his entire body had been electrocuted in an instant. Pei Zio gritted his teeth and didn't let go. Instead, he released his spiritual energy to resist Yin Ruoyan's attack. However, he quickly discovered that Yin Ruoyan's spiritual energy was extremely strange. After a period of hard work, Pei Zio's cultivation was now at the peak of 7th rank, and he shouldn't be too far off from Yin Ruoyan's. However, he discovered that the amount of spiritual energy Yin Ruoyan was using to deal with him was much higher than his. Pei Zio felt that he wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. If he couldn't, even if he didn't die, he would be severely injured. Yin Ruoyan, on the other hand, was also struggling. She had expended quite a bit of spiritual energy in her battle with Sun Yin. If not for that, her 7th rank spiritual energy would have been boosted to the peak of 8th rank by the bracelet, and she wouldn't have been able to defeat Pei Zio. Now, however, she could only barely raise her spiritual energy to the early 8th rank. "Senior brother Guan, I can't hold on much longer. Come help me," Pei Zio pleaded to Guan Tianyu, who had been standing by the side. Rong Yueshan and Yi Qianying were being held up by Zhuo Yifeng and Guan Ruliu respectively, and the only one who could help was Guan Tianyu. Guan Tianyu had been spoiled by the second elder, and he had developed a domineering and reckless personality. However, as soon as he left the second elder's protection, he would become even more cautious. Now that the three of them were fighting each other, it was time for him to strike. He took out his weapon, a large saber, and walked up to Yin Ruoyan. "Brat, I didn't want to kill you, but you've offended too many people and you know too much. If I don't kill you, I'll send you on your way." Guan Tianyu raised the saber in his hand and brought it down on Yin Ruoyan's head. Chapter 266. Yin Ruoyan was held back by Pei Zio, while Zhuo Yifeng and Guan Tianyu were engaged in a fierce battle with Rong Yueshan and Yi Qianying. Just then, Guan Tianyu raised his sword and swung it down at Yin Ruoyan's head. "Yin Ruoyan, be careful," Zhuo Yifeng cried out in alarm. Yin Ruoyan was still competing with Pei Zio in terms of spiritual energy when, as soon as she turned her head, she saw a gleaming blade flying toward her face. In that instant, her pupils suddenly changed color, turning crimson. Guan Tianyu was just in time to see Yun Ruoyan's expression change, but his hand didn't stop in the slightest. In the depths of Yun Ruoyan's mind, a pair of scarlet eyes suddenly opened. That scarlet eye emitted a beam of light that pierced through Yun Ruoyan's eyes and headed straight for Guan Tianyu. "Ah, my eyes, my eyes." Guan Tianyu wailed like a pig being slaughtered. The beam of light that had shot out from Yun Ruoyan's eyes had pierced right into Guan Tianyu's own. Guan Tianyu felt as if two balls of fire had entered his eyes, and tears of blood flowed down his cheeks. "I'm blind. Help, I'm blind." Guan Tianyu threw away his sword and fell to the ground, searching helplessly for his eyes. Yun Ruoyan's scarlet eyes turned toward Pei Zio, who was still engaged in a contest of spiritual energy with her. The sudden turn of events had left Pei Zio dumbfounded, and when Yun Ruoyan's gaze landed on him, he immediately closed his eyes. Just then, another wave of spiritual energy surged toward him, sending him flying backward. When he landed on the ground, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Clearly his injuries weren't light. All four of them stopped fighting and looked toward Yun Ruoyan simultaneously. At that moment, Yun Ruoyan's eyes were bloodshot, and she seemed to have transformed into a completely different person. "Yun Ruoyan, what's wrong?" Zhui Feng and Guan Ruliu asked. Yun Ruoyan, however, didn't seem to hear them. She slowly bent down, picked up Guan Tianyu's sword and walked toward him, who was crawling on the ground. Everyone stared in shock as Yun Ruoyan walked up to Guan Tianyu, raised her sword and was about to chop down on his head. Just as Guan Tianyu was about to become a ghost under Yun Ruoyan's blade, a streak of green light shot toward him like a bolt of lightning. In the blink of an eye, Liemo appeared by Yun Ruoyan's side and grabbed her wrist. What's wrong?" Liemo asked. Yun Ruoyan stared at Liemo with bloodshot eyes, and Liemo felt as if two balls of fire had suddenly fallen into his eyes. His pitch-black pupils suddenly turned icy blue, dispelling the burning sensation in time. Liemo tapped the back of Yun Ruoyan's neck, and she finally closed her eyes and fainted in his arms. "Master Mo, what took you so long?" Guan Ruliu asked. Ruoyan almost died at their hands. Liemo held Yun Ruoyan in his arms as his icy blue eyes swept over Guan Tianyu, Rong Yueshan, and Yun Ruoyan. "I've already said that you're not allowed to harm fellow disciples during this training. You've all been stripped of this opportunity, so scram." "Master Mo, I refuse to accept this." Pei Zio stepped forward. Senior Song Yi and Senior Sun Yen both died at Zhui Feng's hands, and Senior Brother Guanzai was injured by Yun Ruoyan. "If you're going to punish us, you'll have to punish them as well, or I won't accept this." "You refuse to accept this?" Limeau's blue eyes returned to their original pitch-black color, and his gaze toward Zhui Feng was as cold as ever. "That's right. I refuse to accept this," Pei Zio repeated. "Then I'll make sure you do." Liemo flicked his sleeves at Pei Zio, and a gust of spiritual energy swept up Pei Zio and sent him crashing to the ground, blood dripping from his mouth. "Take Guan Tianyu with you and scram." This time no one dared to object. Yi Qianying helped Pei Zio up, and Rong Yueshan helped Guan Tianyu, whose eyes were bloodshot. Then they used a teleportation scroll to return to the treehouse. Mistress, are you all right?" In the darkness, Yun Ruoyan seemed to hear Qiuqiu's cries. She slowly opened her eyes and found herself lying in an unfamiliar pitch-black place. Qiuqiu, where am I?" Yun Ruoyan called out to Qiuqiu, but it seemed to have disappeared. "You're in your head." Qiuqiu didn't respond to Yun Ruoyan, but there was a familiar voice that Yun Ruoyan couldn't recall from where. "Who are you? Where did you say this was?" Yun Ruoyan asked immediately. As soon as she asked, a scarlet light suddenly lit up not far in front of Yun Ruoyan. Yun Ruoyan saw a scarlet eye slowly open, the source of the scarlet light. "It's you?" As soon as Yun Ruoyan saw the demonic eye, she remembered who it was, and even the voice sounded familiar. Yun Ruoyan remembered that this demonic eye was the dragon soul hidden within the demonic ring, and that she had interacted with it before. "Yes, it's me," the voice replied. "Weren't you taken back by the demon elders?" Yun Ruoyan continued. "The One Ring was taken back, but my remnant soul was left behind," the voice said. "I was ordered by the Great Elder to protect you when you are in danger." "Protect me?" Yun Ruoyan hadn't expected the demonic eye's sudden appearance and words. "Yes, to protect you. Until you find your true identity, I'll remain in your body," the demonic eye continued. The Crimson Demon Eye continued, "But your spirit energy cultivation is too low, it's not enough to support me for too long. Most of the time, I'll be in a state of slumber. Only when your life is threatened will I appear. Then who are you?" Yun Ruoyan knew that there was no changing the fact that the demonic eye was in her body. I'm a protector of the demonic dragon clan. The voice slowly closed its eyes, and Yun Ruoyan's surroundings turned pitch black once more. Mistress, can you hear me? Yener, wake up. Li Mo's voice rang out at the same time that Yun Ruoyan finally woke up from the darkness. Yun Ruoyan opened her eyes to see Li Mo looking at her with concern. What's wrong with me? Yun Ruoyan found herself half lying in Li Mo's embrace, her mind still replaying the moment when Guan Tianyu's sword had struck her. Ruoyan, you're awake. Guan Ruliu also walked up to Yun Ruoyan's side, her eyes concerned. Are you feeling unwell? Li Mo, senior sister Guan, what's wrong with me? Yun Ruoyan tried to sit up, but she found that she didn't have much spiritual energy left in her body. You've been unconscious for 2 days, Guan Ruliu replied, her expression turning a little suspicious. What fire-attuned technique did you use that day to blind Guan Tianyu's eyes? I've never heard of such a domineering technique before. Yun Ruoyan paused for a moment, then immediately recalled the words of the demonic eye's spirit. Connecting them to Guan Ruliu's words, Yun Ruoyan guessed that when Guan Tianyu had tried to slash at him, the demonic eye had used some sort of method to blind Guan Tianyu's eyes and save her from his blade. Ruoyan, what's wrong? Guan Ruliu asked when she saw her daughter in a daze. Oh, she's just woken up. Let her rest a little longer. Li Mo interrupted their conversation. Upon hearing Li Mo's words, Guan Ruliu nodded and left. After Guan Ruliu left, Li Mo continued to stare at Yun Ruoyan without a word, making her feel uncomfortable all over. Li Mo, why are you looking at me like that? Yun Ruoyan asked. Are you hiding something from me? Li Mo finally asked. Yun Ruoyan paused, then looked away. After a moment of silence, she realized that she hadn't seen Zhui Yifeng anywhere. Where's Zhui Yifeng? Why don't I see him? Li Mo sighed and replied patiently, there was a wild beast passing by not too far away, and he went to investigate. He'll probably be back soon. What about MR? Why don't I see it either? Yun Ruoyan looked around. And why is senior sister Guan still with us? Isn't she supposed to take care of the 2 students who've lost their cultivations? The beasts have been passing by more and more frequently these past 2 days, and the heavenly spirit fruit's ripening is getting closer and closer. I had that silly bird scout ahead. As he spoke, Li Mo's gaze remained fixed on Yun Ruoyan's face, and not even the slightest change in her expression could escape his gaze. As for Guan Ruliu, Li Mo continued, I sent the 2 students who've lost their cultivations out of the forest, so that she can come with us. Oh, is that so? Yun Ruoyan lowered her head, her eyes darting around as she tried to think of a way to get past Li Mo. If you have any other questions I'll answer them one by one, Li Mo said unhurriedly. I only have one question and I hope you'll answer it truthfully. What is it? Ask away. Yun Ruoyan knew that it wouldn't be easy to get past Li Mo, so she raised her head and met his gaze. Why do I sense the ring's aura on you? Could it be that it's hidden within your body? Li Mo asked. I don't know. Yun Ruoyan answered without hesitation. She knew that the slightest hesitation would cause Li Mo to suspect her, but she had underestimated Li Mo's alertness. Yener. Li Mo called out Yun Ruoyan's name as he slowly said, If you had told me the truth from the start, I would have believed that you didn't know anything. But you've been avoiding the topic for so long and I'm even more certain of my guess. You're definitely hiding something from me. Chapter 267. Tell me, what are you hiding from me? Li Mo looked at Yun Ruoyan, his gaze sharper and sharper, as if trying to figure out the answer to his question from her face. Li Mo wasn't one to pry too deeply, but Yun Ruoyan's current situation made him realize just how serious the matter was. That demonic ring had clearly disappeared, so why did its aura still linger on Yun Ruoyan's body, and why had it protected her at such a crucial moment? Combined with Yun Ruoyan's abnormal behavior in the demonic dragon burial mound, a troubling thought popped up in Li Mo's mind. Was Yun Ruoyan somehow related to the demonic dragons? Could she be the descendant of the demon dragon clan that possessed the bloodline of the demon dragon? Yun Ruoyan was silent for a long while. Li Mo, back in the capital, you once asked me if I had any secrets. Li Mo looked at Yun Ruoyan, waiting for her to continue. Yun Ruoyan paused. I didn't answer you then, but I can tell you now. I have secrets and more than one at that. But just as you said, I can't tell you, not even to my closest kin, at least not yet. Li Mo's dark eyes looked at Yun Ruoyan, and Yun Ruoyan met his gaze without the slightest hint of evasion. I thought that after all this time, you'd be able to trust me completely, Li Mo began. Of course I trust you. Yun Ruoyan grabbed Li Mo's hand. But Li Mo, there are some things that I haven't figured out yet. Can you give me the right to keep them a secret? I don't want you to be hurt, Yin, or... I know. Yun Ruoyan clutched Li Mo's hand tightly. As the two of them spoke, Zhui Feng returned. He was naturally delighted to see Yun Ruoyan awake. However, when he saw that Yun Ruoyan and Li Mo were holding hands and talking, he stood a short distance away. Zhui Feng, what did you find out? Yun Ruoyan had also seen Zhui Feng. She wanted to end her conversation with Li Mo, so she took the initiative to greet him. Zhui Feng was also curious about what had happened to Yun Ruoyan, but he didn't intend to ask any questions. You're awake? When did you wake up? Zhui Feng walked up to her and smiled. He just woke up, Yun Ruoyan replied. What did you find out? Zhui Feng's expression turned serious. This time, not only are there many low-level magical beasts, there are also some mid-level magical beasts. The closer they got to the center and the closer it was to the ripening date of the heavenly spirit fruit, the more the high-level magical beasts drove away the other magical beasts. The next day, Murphy returned to report to Li Mo that it had encountered 3 high-rank beasts, and that it wasn't sure if it would be able to defeat one of them. Emitter hadn't reached the location of the Glories Will tree that Li Mo had mentioned, so Li Mo deduced that there were likely more than 3 magical beasts in the area. Yun Ruoyan wanted to continue onward, but the awakening of the One Ring had taken a huge toll on her. The group had no choice but to rest for another day and night. After a day and 2 nights of cultivation, Yun Ruoyan had finally recovered 80 to 90% of her spiritual energy. Originally, Li Mo had wanted to let her rest for another day, but Yun Ruoyan was in a rush to become a 7th-rank blade master, so she had to obtain the heavenly spirit fruit. When Yun Ruoyan suggested that they set off immediately, Li Mo didn't stop her. However, he suddenly suggested that the center of the forest was too dangerous, and that Zhui Feng and Guan Ruliu should remain on the outskirts of the forest. Then Zhui Feng and Yun Ruoyan flew toward the center of the forest. By nightfall, the two of them had finally reached the outskirts of the forest. In front of them was a bottomless canyon. That's the center of the forest, Li Mo said, pointing to the other side of the canyon. Although the canyon was deep, it wasn't very wide. As a 7th-rank blade master, Yun Ruoyan should be able to traverse it. Suddenly, the roar of a magical beast rang out. It came from far away, but its power didn't diminish in the slightest. Before the roar subsided, the earth shook, and Yun Ruoyan and Li Mo saw a horde of wild beasts and magical beasts running out of the forest, scurrying across the canyon toward the outskirts of the forest. Amazing! Yun Ruoyan exclaimed. Don't worry, I'm here. Li Mo hugged Yun Ruoyan tightly in his arms as they continued toward the heart of the forest. Amukur hid in Li Mo's loose hood as they followed the two of them into the heart of the forest. By then the sky was already dark, but the two of them didn't intend to rest. According to Li Mo's calculations, the heavenly spirit fruit would ripen in the next 2 or 3 days, and they had to reach the heavenly spirit fruit as soon as possible. Just as Amor had said, Yun Ruoyan and Li Mo saw quite a few high-rank beasts along the way. Li Mo told her that the high-rank beasts in the forest were far superior to those on the Xuanhuan continent. Not only were they larger in size, but their attacks were also twice as powerful. Even more frightening was the fact that some high-rank beasts were able to use external spiritual techniques. By midnight, the two of them finally reached the forest where the heavenly spirit fruit was. As they neared the forest, Yun Ruoyan sensed the auras of at least 3 powerful beasts. Li Mo brought Yun Ruoyan to a branch of a large tree, and suddenly Yun Ruoyan sensed one of the 3 auras heading in their direction. Yun Ruoyan looked toward Li Mo, who gestured for her to be silent, and the two of them retracted their auras. Thud, 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 a massive tremor grew closer and closer, so intense that even the tree they were standing on began to shake. A beast with long jade-green fur walked out of the depths of the forest toward the two of them. What's that? Yun Ruoyan asked in an extremely soft voice. A slumber beast, Li Mo replied. As its name suggested, slumber beasts love to sleep, and they preferred to sleep in damp places. The jade-green fur on its body was a result of its prolonged slumber. The slumber beast's signature move was its roar of spiritual energy, and the roar that had sounded when the two of them reached the edge of the forest had come from the slumber beast. Even the slumber beast has woken up? It looks like there are more beasts coveting the heavenly spirit fruit than I expected, Li Mo replied in a small voice. Sure, it's coming. Yun Ruoyan watched as the slumber beast swayed its massive body all the way to the tree they were standing on, then rubbed its massive body against the trunk and began to itch. The trunk of the tree was swayed by the slumber beast, but the two of them stood motionless, deeply afraid that they would alert the slumber beast. If the slumber beast were to roar at them, Liemo might be fine, but Yunruoyan might not be able to withstand it. Fortunately, the slumber beast didn't notice the two of them. After rubbing its itch, it lay down by the tree and fell asleep, snoring loudly. Why don't you rest here? I'll go in and take a look, Liemo said. No need. Liemo hurriedly grabbed her hand. I'll go with you. Liemo led Yunruoyan toward the heavenly spirit fruit tree. About 15 minutes later, Liemo and Yunruoyan once more stopped on the branch of a large tree. Look, that's the heavenly spirit fruit tree. Liemo pointed at a strange plant not far from them. Yunruoyan looked in the direction Liemo was pointing and finally saw the heavenly spirit fruit tree that Liemo had been talking about. This heavenly spirit tree was completely beyond her wildest imaginations. It was a tree that constantly changed color. One moment it would be emerald green, the next it would be scarlet, and then it would turn into a jade tree that was as white as an ice sculpture. Just when Yunruoyan thought that it wouldn't change any further, it turned into a muddy yellow. In short, it was very strange. On the Xuanhuan continent, this tree would be considered a tall tree, but compared to the giant trees around it, it was much smaller. At this moment, this small, ever-changing heavenly spirit fruit tree was surrounded by 3 high-rank beasts. These 3 high-level magical beasts stared unblinkingly at the heavenly spirit tree in the middle, as if even a fly wouldn't be able to escape their eyes and get close to the tree. Liemo, why is this tree constantly changing colors? Yunruoyan asked Liemo. Liemo didn't answer Yunruoyan's question. Instead, his eyes were focused on the 3 beasts. When Yunruoyan saw that Liemo wasn't responding to her question, she turned to look at him curiously. However, after a while, she didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. Let's go, Liemo said after observing for a while. Then he took Yunruoyan on his sword and left the area. They found a giant tree to rest on. As soon as the two of them landed on the ground, Yunruoyan repeated her doubts. Liemo told her that the heavenly spirit fruit could only bear 2 fruits at a time, each of which had fire, wind, ice, and earth attributes. As a result, whoever consumed it would benefit immensely no matter what type of cultivation technique they practiced. This was also the main reason why it attracted so many beasts. These 3 high-rank beasts all have powerful auras. Liemo, how confident are you that you'll be able to obtain the heavenly spirit fruit? Yunruoyan asked. While I was observing those 3 beasts, I discovered something, Liemo replied instead of answering Yunruoyan's question. What's that? Yunruoyan immediately asked. 2 of the 3 beasts seemed to be in a stalemate with the other. That's normal. They all want the heavenly spirit fruit, so it's only natural that they'd be in a stalemate. However, I didn't see 2 beasts in a stalemate. If I'm not wrong, that slumber beast was with the other 3 beasts, Liemo continued. There are 2 heavenly spirit fruits, so the 4 beasts are in a stalemate. When the heavenly spirit fruit ripens, there's bound to be a huge battle and we'll have a chance. If we can use some tricks to intensify the battle, our chances of victory will be even greater. What tricks? Yunruoyan's eyes lit up as she looked at Liemo. Chapter 268. Yunruoyan asked Liemo what method he would use to intensify the battle between the beasts. Bewitching powder, Liemo replied. Bewitching powder? Yunruoyan exclaimed in surprise. You mean to use it to confuse those 4 beasts? Yes, Liemo replied. If they fight in pairs, even if one of them loses, the other 2 won't be easy to deal with. Is it possible that both of them will be injured and then we'll be the ones to reap the benefits? Both of them might be injured, but we won't be the ones to reap the benefits. Liemo frowned. There are 4 high-rank beasts guarding the heavenly spirit fruit tree, and there must be other beasts nearby that are eyeing the fruit like we are, but they've been intimidated by the 4 beasts and don't dare to approach. Once both sides are injured, the rest of the beasts will surely rush over, and it'll be even more difficult for us to obtain the heavenly spirit fruit. After hearing Liemo's analysis, Yunruoyan agreed that it would be better to use the bewitching powder to confuse the 4 beasts. The problem, however, was that the bewitching powder she had on her was of a low grade, and it would only work on those with a lower cultivation than her. It wouldn't even work on those with a higher cultivation than her, let alone high-rank beasts. After hearing Yunruoyan's words, Liemo extended a hand to her. Lend me your pill cauldron as well as the bewitching flower seeds. I'll personally refine the bewitching potion we'll be using this time. Yunruoyan had 2 cauldrons in her pocket dimension. One was from Peizio's house and it was specifically used to refine pills. The other was from the market and it was specifically used to refine poisons. Yunruoyan took out the poison refining cauldron and handed it to Liemo, then took out a large portion of the bewitching flower seeds. As soon as Xuanhuan took out the bewitching flower seeds, Emor, who had been hiding in Li Mo's hood, popped out, picked up one of the seeds and swallowed it whole. Greedy bird, Xuanhuan chuckled. She had hoped that Emor would be able to help, but Li Mo told her that one of the four beasts, the slumber beast, was its opponent. Murphy's low growl could hypnotize magic beasts, but the sleeping beast's roar was enough to wake up all sleeping magic beasts. Murphy was useless against the sleeping beast. Mistress, not everyone has the opportunity to see the slaughtering king concoct pills. You have to learn from him, Xiaoqiu reminded. Xuanhuan immediately focused on Li Mo's every movement as he took the cauldron and the bewitched flower seed. Li Mo's pill-making skills were far superior to Lin Zainan's, and the spiritual fire he released was also the purest. Furthermore, there was no delay or waste in the transformation of the spiritual fire's various colors. As Li Mo concocted the pills, he explained the differences between concocting pills and poisons, as well as answering some of the questions that Xuanhuan posed. Although Xuanhuan had become Li Mo's disciple, Li Mo hadn't had many opportunities to teach her about cultivation and pill-making, much less about poisons. As a result, Xuanhuan treasured this opportunity very much. While Li Mo was refining the bewildering powder, she studied and questioned him meticulously. By late at night, Li Mo had finally refined enough of the bewildering powder. The two of them planned to begin refining the heavenly spirit fruit on the day it ripened, then began to rest and recuperate. 2 days later, Zhui Feng and Guan Ruliu arrived at the canyon at the edge of the central region. Without Li Mo's help, the two of them encountered quite a few wild beasts along the way, including some low-rank and mid-rank beasts. However, with their cultivation and combat experience, they were able to kill most of them, and those that they couldn't kill were easily shaken off. Senior Guan, can you jump across this canyon? Zhui Feng asked Guan Ruliu. Guan Ruliu looked at the canyon, which was deep but not wide. In the past, I could easily jump across it, but now that my cultivation hasn't recovered, I'm afraid I won't be able to. Zhui Feng looked at the other side of the canyon, frowning thoughtfully. Junior Zhua, you're not thinking of entering the central region, are you? Guan Ruliu guessed Zhui Feng's intentions from his expression. Master Emo told us to wait on the outskirts for him and Ruoyan to return. It's best if you don't take the risk on your own. Since I'm already here, I'll feel regretful if I don't explore the central region, and I don't want to leave any regrets behind. Zhui Feng took out a scroll from his pouch and handed it to Guan Ruliu. If you encounter any danger, use this to return to the treehouse. Where did you get this? Guan Ruliu asked curiously when she saw that Zhui Feng was holding a teleportation scroll in his hand. Zhui Feng replied, I got it from Song Yi and Sun Yan. This is for you, I have another one with me. Song Yi and Sun Yan's corpses had been buried by Zhui Feng, and these two scrolls had been left behind by him. In that case you must be careful. Use the scroll if you encounter any danger. Guan Ruliu saw that Zhui Feng had made up his mind. Alright. Zhui Feng nodded, then gathered spirit energy under his feet and rushed toward the canyon. When he reached the edge of the canyon he suddenly jumped up and his whole body soared above the canyon. Another wave of white spiritual energy rose from beneath his feet, sending him to the other side of the gorge. As soon as Li Mo landed, he glanced back at Guan Ruliu on the other side of the gorge, then quickly entered the forest. Yun Ruoyan and Li Mo had been waiting by the heavenly spirit tree for 2 days. During these 2 days the two of them would check on the tree from time to time. The heavenly spirit tree was still surrounded by the same 4 beasts, each taking turns to rest. It was as if they had made a pact not to attack the last beast while the other was resting. Yun Ruoyan asked Li Mo why the 4 beasts had been eyeing each other for so long, and why they had to wait until the heavenly spirit fruit was ripe before fighting each other over it. Li Mo told her that each of the 4 beasts had cultivated different elemental techniques, and that they were the more powerful of those techniques. Their presence would serve as a deterrent to the nearby beasts before the heavenly spirit fruit ripened. If 1 or 2 of them were to die before the fruit ripened, there would still be other beasts to fill the gap, which would only be more troublesome. Li Mo also said that the 4 beasts might have even been friends in the past. But even if they were friends, they would still abide by the terms of their agreement. Once the benefits were right in front of them, they wouldn't hesitate to kill. Night fell once more. After having some wild fruits for dinner, the two of them went to investigate the heavenly spirit fruit once more. Li Mo and Yun Ruoyan cautiously approached the heavenly spirit tree. Under the ever-changing canopy of the heavenly spirit fruit tree, Yun Ruoyan finally caught sight of the fruit. It was about the size of a fist and like the tree itself, it was constantly changing color. When does the heavenly spirit fruit ripen? Xuanhuan asked. When it ripens, it will suddenly emit a strange fragrance, and it will automatically fall from the tree, Liemo replied. Liemo, look. Just as Xuanhuan was listening to Liemo's words, she suddenly saw a beast with a sharp horn poking its head out of a nearby forest. As soon as Xuanhuan's voice fell, the 4 high-rank beasts spat out a gigantic fireball from their mouths, directly smashing into the head of the beast that was peeking out. Xuanhuan only heard a loud boom before the horned beast's entire head was scorched by the fireball. Oh! The horned beast let out a pained howl before running away, shaking its flaming head. Whoosh! This time, the green-scaled high-rank magical beast spat out an icicle as thick as a small tree trunk, piercing through the head of another magical beast that Xuanhuan hadn't noticed. The mountain-sized beast died on the spot. Impressive! Xuanhuan couldn't help but exclaim. Just as Xuanhuan shifted her gaze away from the fleeing beast, a strange fragrance assaulted her senses. It was even more fragrant than anything Xuanhuan had ever tasted or smelled before. Moreover, it wasn't a strong aroma, but an indescribable, refreshing fragrance. Xuanhuan immediately turned to Liemo, only to see a hint of delight on his solemn face. He glanced at Xuanhuan, then quickly turned to the heavenly spirit tree and the 4 beasts surrounding it. The 4 magical beasts were all attracted by this strange fragrance. They squinted their eyes and looked like they were enjoying it very much. The heavenly spirit fruit has ripened. Let's begin. Yes. Xuanhuan immediately responded. A green sword aura appeared beneath Liemo's feet, and he rushed toward the heavenly spirit tree without hesitation. 2 fist-sized heavenly spirit fruits fell to the ground, and the strange fragrance immediately disappeared. The 4 magical beasts recovered from the aroma of the heavenly spirit fruit. Their eyes greedily scanned the 2 fruits on the ground, which were still glowing with various colors, and they bared their sharp fangs at the same time. Then they approached the 2 beasts opposite them in pairs, and a fierce battle was about to unfold. At this time, Liemo and Xuanhuan had also stopped a few feet away from the heavenly spirit tree. The 2 of them used their short human bodies to hide behind the glories will fruit tree quietly. Xuanhuan poked her head out from behind the heavenly spirit tree. Before the 4 beasts had begun their battle, the auras of many powerful beasts had suddenly appeared in the surrounding forest. Xuanhuan scanned the area and saw more than 10 pairs of green eyes flickering in and out of sight. Just as Liemo had said, if the 4 beasts were to fight to the point where all 4 of them were injured, the other beasts hidden in the forest would charge forward and engage in a chaotic battle. By then, no matter how powerful Liemo was, he wouldn't be able to snatch the heavenly spirit fruit from so many beasts and escape with her. Chapter 269. The 2 heavenly spirit fruits lay no more than 30 feet away from her, and the 4 high-rank beasts were baring their fangs at one another, completely oblivious to their presence. Xuanhuan took a step in the direction of the heavenly spirit fruit. What are you doing? Xuanhuan crouched down trying to sneak around. Liemo grabbed the heavenly spirit fruit without anyone noticing, but Liemo pulled her back. I want to steal the heavenly spirit fruit, Xuanhuan replied honestly. So many pairs of eyes are on the heavenly spirit fruit. As soon as you touch it, the beasts will roar and the 4 beasts will pounce on you, Liemo said solemnly. Don't be in such a rush. Wait and see. At this moment, the 4 magical beasts were in a stalemate, not giving way at all. Instead, their battle intent was growing stronger and stronger. Finally, the green-furred sleeping beast roared at the red-furred magical beast that could spit fire and the green-scaled magical beast that could spit icicles. This was the first time Xuanhuan had felt its roar from such a close distance. The first time had been at the edge of the valley, where a single roar had driven a large number of wild beasts and high-rank beasts out of its territory. Xuanhuan felt as though the roar was earth-shattering. Fortunately, Liemo had blocked her ears in time, or she might have fainted from the impact. The slumber beast's roar caused 7 or 8 of the dozen pairs of green eyes to disappear, while the rest quickly disappeared. The 2 high-level magical beasts opposite the slumbering beast were shaking their heads non-stop. It seemed like they were also shaken to the core. At this moment, the yellow magical beast with a bald head charged towards the red-furred magical beast and slammed into its stomach. Bang! The red-furred magical beast was instantly sent flying, crashing heavily into a huge tree. Crack crack. 2 of the trees were directly crushed by the red-furred magical beast's enormous body. The red-furred beast landed on the ground and spat out a mouthful of bright red blood. When the blood splattered onto the vegetation actually burst into flames. Why is its blood on fire? Xuanhuan asked in shock. This yellow-furred magical beast cultivates earth elemental spirit energy, so its attack power is very shocking. It actually caused a crack in the spiritual sea of the red-furred magical beast that cultivates fire elemental spirit energy, causing the fire elemental spirit energy to leak out. Even his spiritual sea was cracked by the impact. This was the first time Xuanhuan had heard of such a thing, and she was quite surprised. When the green-scaled magical beast saw this, it spat out a large icicle at the yellow-furred magical beast. The yellow-furred magical beast dodged 2 of the icicles, but the third icicle finally hit its body. All Xuanhuan heard was the sound of metal shattering as the icicle shattered, leaving a long gash on the yellow-furred beast's thigh. Seeing that its companion was injured, the slumbering beast let out another roar. However, this roar was much weaker than the first one. Every time the slumbering beast roared, it would expend spiritual energy, so its roars would become weaker and weaker. In fact, if it roared continuously for a short period of time, it would eventually lose all of its power. The green-scaled magical beast was only slightly dazed by the slumbering beast's roar, but it quickly regained consciousness and shot an icicle at the slumbering beast. The slumbering beast's body was clumsy, and it wasn't good at dodging. The icicle pierced its thigh, and its massive body fell heavily to the ground. Seeing this, the yellow-furred magical beast endured its injuries and, while the slumbering beast wasn't paying attention, slammed into its back once more. Bang! The slumbering beast suffered the same fate as the red-furred magical beast and was sent flying. It landed heavily on the ground, breaking several large trees in its wake. When it landed, the slumbering beast also spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. This time, when the blood touched the ground, it immediately formed a thin layer of ice. Clearly, the yellow-furred magical beast's violent collision had also caused cracks to appear in its spiritual sea. This time, the 4 high-level magical beasts were all defeated and injured. At this moment, a dozen pairs of red magical beast eyes suddenly appeared around the perverted forest. Just like Xuanhuan and Liemo, they were also waiting for an opportunity. All of the beasts around us seem eager to try. Why don't we wait a little longer? Before Xuanhuan could finish, Liemo interrupted her. Before we're completely confident, if there's a chance that we can avoid danger and achieve our goal, then we'll have to be patient. Xuanhuan nodded and calmed herself down to observe the situation with Liemo. By this time, the other 4 beasts had all collapsed to the ground. Only the yellow-furred magical beast was the least injured. Its golden eyes scanned its surroundings, and all the red eyes immediately retreated. The yellow-furred magical beast glanced at the slumbering beast, who nodded back at it. The yellow-furred magical beast slowly walked toward the 2 heavenly spirit fruits. Although Xuanhuan was a relatively calm person, she couldn't help but panic when she saw that the heavenly spirit fruits were about to fall into someone else's hands. This yellow-furred magical beast is very powerful, Liemo told Xuanhuan. Not only is it fast, but it's also powerful enough to shatter a magical beast's spiritual vortex, so it's best not to fight it head-on. Silly bird, come out. Liemo turned to Xuanhuan. Amora, which had been nestled in Liemo's hood, reluctantly stuck its head out. Amora's nemesis was the slumbering beast, which had been so frightened by its roar that it had to hide in Liemo's hood. Now that its master was calling for it, it had no choice but to stick its head out. This is a bewitching powder. Use it on the yellow-furred magical beast. Liemo handed Emo a specially made cloth pouch. Although Emora's voice had a hypnotic effect, its cultivation was still much lower than that of the 4 high-rank beasts. Moreover, the slumbering beast was also present, so Emora's hypnotic abilities were ineffective. However, its petite form and nimble flight speed were still of some help to Liemo. Emor hesitated for a moment, its beady eyes glancing at the injured slumbering beast on the ground in the distance. Only then did it emerge from Liemo's hood. Emor picked up the pouch and flew toward the yellow-furred beast. Xuanhuan and Liemo's gazes followed it. Emor held the pouch in its mouth all the way to the yellow-furred beast. The yellow-furred beast saw it, but it didn't seem to mind. Instead, it let out a low, warning growl. Emor, on the other hand, pecked open the pouch and sprinkled the colorless, odorless powder on the yellow-furred beast's head. The yellow-furred beast felt an itch at the tip of its nose, and it sneezed loudly, sucking in even more of the bewitching powder. Because it had its back to the other beasts, none of them noticed what had happened. Seeing that it had accomplished its mission, Emor cleverly flew back to Liemo and Xuanhuan's side to watch the yellow-furred beast with its 2 masters. After inhaling the bewitching powder that Liemo had concocted specifically for them, the yellow-furred beast began to feel a little dizzy. We can show ourselves now. Only then did Liemo take Yunruoyan's hand and lead her out from behind the heavenly spirit fruit tree. The heavenly spirit fruit tree no longer glowed when the fruits fell to the ground, so the two of them walked out from a patch of darkness. Most of the beasts present had night vision, so even though they were in complete darkness, the two of them were still seen by many of the beasts present. Immediately, a large number of magical beasts' gazes appeared in the forest. These gazes weren't just red, there were also green and yellow gazes. Without exception, all of those gazes landed on Yunruoyan and Liemo. Liemo dragged Yunruoyan toward the two heavenly spirit fruits at an unhurried pace, but without the slightest pause. The slumbering beast, the scaled beast, and the red-furred beast all crawled up from the ground and growled at Yunruoyan and Liemo in warning. Liemo and Yunruoyan released their auras as soon as they walked out of the forest. Liemo was a peak 9th rank blade master, and Yunruoyan was a peak 7th rank blade master. When the two of them released their auras at the same time, they were able to intimidate the low-ranked magical beasts and a few mid-ranked magical beasts. Even the 3 injured high-level magical beasts did not immediately attack the two of them. The slumbering beast growled, and Imura, which had been perched on Liemo's shoulder, immediately burrowed back into his hood. Then, following the slumbering beast, the other 2 high-rank beasts growled as well. "Mistress, these 3 high-rank beasts are ordering the surrounding beasts to attack you." Qiuqiu's voice rang out in Yunruoyan's mind. Not long after Qiuqiu's words, the surrounding low-rank and mid-rank beasts began to emerge from the forest and surround Yunruoyan and Yunruoyan. Yunruoyan had already taken out her spirit steel dagger, ready to fight, but Liemo appeared as relaxed as ever. Suddenly, a red-eyed wolf pounced at the two of them. Yunruoyan raised her dagger and prepared to face it head-on, but Liemo pulled her into his embrace and dashed to the side. Before the two of them had even landed on the ground, Yunruoyan heard a loud bang. The yellow-furred beast had slammed into the wolf's body. The wolf's waist had been snapped in an instant, and by the time it hit the ground, it was already dead. The yellow-furred beast stood in front of Liemo and Yunruoyan, acting as their bodyguard. The other beasts didn't dare approach. The yellow-skinned magical beast that had been hit by the bewitching powder was in a stalemate with the other magical beasts. Yunruoyan and Liemo arrived effortlessly at the spot where the heavenly spirit fruit had fallen. Liemo bent down and picked up a fist-sized heavenly spirit fruit that glowed with multicolored light. Yunruoyan reached out for the other heavenly spirit fruit, but just then something strange happened. A small black creature with sharp teeth and a long nose, a nose that Yunruoyan couldn't name, suddenly burrowed out of the soil beside the heavenly spirit fruit and grabbed it before Yunruoyan could. "Ah!" Yunruoyan cried out and hurriedly tried to snatch the fruit back, but the creature plunged headfirst into the soil and disappeared without a trace. Chapter 270. When Yunruoyan saw that the beast had burrowed into the ground with the heavenly spirit fruit, she quickly pulled out her dagger and began digging at the spot where it had burrowed. "That's a burrowing rat, and it can burrow into the ground like it's walking on flat ground. There's no way to chase it back," Liemo explained to Yunruoyan before pulling her up. By this time, the other 3 high-rank beasts had also noticed the yellow-skinned beast's abnormality. Although they were all heavily injured, they still struggled to their feet and formed a standoff with the yellow-skinned beast. In the dark forest behind the 3 high-level magical beasts, the number of twinkling magical beast eyes quickly increased from the previous dozen or 20 pairs to an uncountable number of hundreds. "We have to think of a way to escape. I'm afraid the yellow-skinned beast won't be able to withstand the attacks of so many beasts," Liemo said, before handing the heavenly spirit fruit to Yunruoyan. Yunruoyan took the heavenly spirit fruit and stored it in her bracelet. At this moment, the 3 magical beasts let out low roars. Along with these low roars, the low-ranked magical beasts behind them walked out of the forest. Among them were a large number of wolves, as well as the fiery-maned hounds and saber-toothed tigers that Yunruoyan had seen before. Roar roared, the 3 beasts howled in unison, and 7 or 8 wolves pounced at the yellow-skinned beast, Yunruoyan and Liemo at the same time. The yellow-furred beast stood in front of Liemo and Yunruoyan like a wall. When the 7 or 8 wolves slammed into its body, 3 were bounced back, 2 were smacked to death, and 3 managed to bite into its body. The excruciating pain caused the yellow-skinned beast to howl in pain, and more beasts pounced on it. Enduring the pain, the yellow-skinned beast began to fight with the beasts. No matter how strong the yellow-skinned beast was, it wouldn't be able to withstand the simultaneous attacks of so many beasts, and it didn't look like it would be able to hold out for long. When Liemo saw this, a green sword aura appeared beneath his feet, and he prepared to leave with Yunruoyan. "Liemo, look." Yunruoyan pointed at the branch of a large tree in front of them. Using her night vision, she could see a large ape squatting on the branch. The ape bared its fangs at her and Liemo, its blood-red eyes staring at her without blinking. As soon as Xuanhuan pointed at the ape, it pounced at her. Xuanhuan immediately raised her dagger in front of her, assuming a defensive stance. However, Liemo seemed to have been prepared for this. Even at such a close distance, he dodged the attack. What kind of magical beast is this? Why haven't I sensed its presence in the last 2 days? Xuanhuan asked Liemo. They have always been there. But because they're only wild monkeys, their spiritual energy cultivation is much lower than that of most low-rank beasts, so it's hard to notice them unless you know them well. But even without spiritual power, these wild monkeys are quite difficult to deal with in the giant forest. Sometimes they are even harder to deal with than magical beasts. What? Because there are so many of them, and once they identify a target, all of them will work together to accomplish it without regard for their own lives. That's why they're so difficult to deal with. Look around you. By this time Xuanhuan had arrived behind Liemo. She held tightly to his waist to maintain her balance as she surveyed her surroundings. Xuanhuan could see that, at some point, there had been a large number of wild monkeys hiding in the trees. Some of them were clinging to the trunks, some were squatting in the branches, some were hanging upside down, and some were hiding in the treetops. It was as if they had surrounded Liemo and Xuanhuan. Liemo held Xuanhuan in midair, as if the slightest movement would cause the monkeys to pounce on them and tear them to shreds. Are you ready? Liemo asked softly. Yes. Xuanhuan replied softly. Liemo suddenly moved. He directed the sword light toward the sky. Xuanhuan saw countless monkeys pouncing toward the two of them like rain. Xuanhuan's dark steel dagger danced in the air. On the other hand, Liemo controlled his sword as he released fireballs and icicles to deal with the monkeys that pounced on them. All Xuanhuan could hear was the screams and howls of the monkeys filling her ears. Just as the two of them were about to break through the treetops and reach the top of the forest, they encountered a large group of wild monkeys pulling and biting each other's tails to form a large net that blocked their way. Liemo didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. He turned to Amoer, who was still in his hood. Silly bird, if you're not dead, come out and help us. Then Xuanhuan saw Amoer poke its head out of Liemo's hood, spread its wings and charge forward. As it charged upward, Amoer's body suddenly expanded. From a small beast no larger than a sparrow, it suddenly transformed into a flying beast that was many times larger than an eagle. Xuanhuan watched as Amoer extended its wings and charged toward the large net of monkeys in front of her and Liemo. Those monkeys were very strong, and even with Amoer's momentum, they didn't seem to have any intention of retreating. However, Amoer didn't intend to fight them head-on. Just as it was about to reach the monkeys, Xuanhuan suddenly heard a low, familiar moan. The demonic moan caused Xuanhuan's head to spin, and her body was about to fall. Fortunately, Liemo caught her in time and wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her into his embrace. The monkeys, on the other hand, were knocked unconscious by Amoer's moan, and one by one they began to fall to the ground. Liemo and Xuanhuan finally managed to escape from the giant forest with Amoer's help. At the same time that the two of them emerged, a roar came from the ground. Xuanhuan felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over her head. The slumber beast had let out a full-throated roar when it saw the two of them escape. Frightened, Amoer's massive body instantly shrunk, returning to its sparrow-sized form before burrowing back into Liemo's hood. This was the first time that Xuanhuan had seen Amoer's transformed form, and she had been quite shocked. Now that Amoer had returned with its tail between its legs, she couldn't help but laugh. Even as she breathed a sigh of relief, she couldn't help but sigh. There's always a counter to everything. By then the sky was already bright and the two of them were flying through the giant forest. Xuanhuan took out the heavenly spirit fruit, sighing at how difficult it had been to obtain it. The heavenly spirit fruit has to be consumed within 24 hours for it to be most effective, Liemo instructed. Let's find a quiet place for you to consume it and help you break through. Less than a kilometer away from the heavenly spirit tree, Xuanfeng darted through the forest toward the heavenly spirit fruit tree. Xuanfeng hadn't slept at all last night. He had been on his way the whole time. Although he didn't know about the heavenly spirit fruit, the loud noises and the beasts that had been escaping from that direction for the past few days told him that something unusual was going on. What's more, Xuanfeng was certain that both Xuanhuan and Liemo were in that area. But by the time Xuanfeng arrived, all that was left was a messy battlefield littered with the corpses of many magical beasts. Apart from that, there was nothing special about it. Xuanfeng searched among the corpses. Although he didn't find anything special, he did find quite a few mid-rank beast cores. What surprised Zhuo Yifeng even more was that he had obtained a high-rank Earth Elemental Beast core. Just for that core, Zhuo Yifeng's trip to the Heartland hadn't been in vain. After his bountiful harvest, Zhuo Yifeng began heading back. At the same time, Li Mo and Yun Ruoyan were looking for a suitable place to cultivate. Li Mo brought Yun Ruoyan to a stop on the trunk of a giant tree. This tree was much thicker than the surrounding trees, and it would take at least 10 people to completely surround it. About 10 feet above the ground, there was a hole in the tree that was as tall as a grown man. The two of them stopped in front of the hole, and Mo chirped cheerfully before flying into it. Li Mo and Yun Ruoyan glanced at each other before following suit. So this was Mo's home. When Li Mo brought Yun Ruoyan to look for a suitable place, Mo immediately brought the two of them to its own home. The two of them followed Mo into the hole. The hole was spacious enough to fit 7 or 8 people, and it was rather clean. It seemed that Mo was quite hygienic. Hey Li Mo, what's that? As Yun Ruoyan observed her surroundings, she noticed that there were a few bones scattered in a corner of the hole, and they were all rather thick. Yun Ruoyan walked over and picked up what looked like a leg bone. Just as she was about to mock Mo for having a fetish for collecting the bones of its prey, Li Mo explained, "These are the bones of an adult bewitching bird, probably left behind by Mo's parents." When Yun Ruoyan heard this, she respectfully placed the bone back in its original position. "Yen come here." Li Mo took Yun Ruoyan's hand and led her to another corner of the hole. There were some soft leaves and fur there, most likely Mo's resting spot. After Mo circled the tree once, Yun Ruoyan gave it a bewitching flower seed. After eating it, it obediently stopped at a spot to rest. This place is very suitable for cultivation. Li Mo pulled her to sit on the soft, furry leaves. "Yen there's no time to lose. Why don't you eat the heavenly spirit fruit now?" "All right," Yun Ruoyan replied, then took out the heavenly spirit fruit from her pocket dimension. In Yun Ruoyan's hands, the heavenly spirit fruit glowed with a dazzling, multicolored light. "Mistress, if you manage to break through this time, you can help me break through as well," Xianxia said in Yun Ruoyan's head. Chapter 272. This. Zhuo Yifeng handed over the dagger that he'd used to threaten the ground rat. The ground rat glanced at it but refused. "Use that." The ground rat pointed at the tiger canine arrowhead on Zhuo Yifeng's back. Zhuo Yifeng's tiger canine arrowheads were almost all used up, and there were only 3 left in his quiver. "Your arrowhead looks unusual, so it must be very sharp." "Use it," the ground rat said. Zhuo Yifeng pulled out an arrow and pried open the shell of the heavenly spirit fruit as the ground rat had instructed. A 5-colored pill was revealed. "Eat this and it'll help you advance your cultivation," the ground rat hurriedly instructed. Zhuo Yifeng looked at the pill in his hand and felt the spiritual energy it contained. Finally, a smile appeared on his face. Zhuo Yifeng stood up with the pill in one hand and the ground rat in the other. "Hey, let me go," the ground rat cried out. Zhuo Yifeng let go and the ground rat fell to the ground. It cried out in pain and scrambled back into the ground, disappearing into the ground in the blink of an eye. With the pill in his hand, Zhuo Yifeng found a secluded spot, ate the pill and began to cultivate. What he cultivated was a wood-attuned external spiritual technique. After consuming the heavenly spirit fruit, wood-attuned spiritual energy began to flow through his limbs and meridians. Zhuo Yifeng's cultivation took 4 to 5 days. 5 days later, he encountered the same situation as Yun Ruoyan. Wood-attuned spiritual energy was constantly being produced, but there wasn't enough space in his spiritual vortex. If he didn't gather all the spiritual energy in his body into his spiritual vortex, his body wouldn't be able to bear it. If he gathered all the spiritual energy into his spiritual vortex wouldn't be able to bear it. Because he didn't have a technique to condense spiritual energy, Zhuo Yifeng was in danger of going berserk. "Haha, this is the price you'll have to pay for attacking me." Suddenly, the ground rat burrowed out of the ground and laughed arrogantly at Zhuo Yifeng. The ground rat had been following Zhuo Yifeng this entire time, waiting for him to go berserk so that it could reap the benefits. As it turned out, the gopher spirit was born with a handicap and was unable to cultivate on its own to obtain spiritual energy, so it cultivated a special technique. This technique allowed it to absorb spiritual energy from others, so even if it stole the heavenly spirit fruit, it wouldn't be able to consume it. Just as the ground rat spirit was fretting over how to use the heavenly spirit fruit, Zhuo Yifeng appeared. As such, the ground rat spirit had decided to make Zhuo Yifeng his cultivation vessel, feed him the heavenly spirit fruit, and then ambush him while he was cultivating to absorb his spiritual energy. Just as it was looking for an opportunity to strike, Zhuo Yifeng's cultivation suddenly went berserk. The ground rat spirit couldn't help but cry out, "The heavens are helping me. What do you want to do?" Zhuo Yifeng opened his eyes and looked at the ground rat spirit ground rat. However, the spirit energy in his body and spiritual sea continued to surge, causing his face to flicker between white and green. Although he held a bow in his hand, he didn't even have the strength to draw it. Although his body and spiritual sea were filled with spiritual power, he couldn't use any of his techniques. Zhuo Yifeng could only watch as the ground rat spirit arrogantly approached him. "Since you're in so much pain, I'll help you end it." After saying that, the ground rat spirit's small body suddenly shot forward and landed on Zhuo Yifeng's back. Like a pancake, it stuck to Zhuo Yifeng's back and began to absorb Zhuo Yifeng's spiritual energy. Zhuo Yifeng struggled at first, but as the ground rat absorbed the spiritual energy in his body, the spiritual energy in Zhuo Yifeng's body was released. Thus, he stopped struggling and allowed the ground rat to absorb. The heavenly spirit fruit continued to generate spiritual energy in Zhuo Yifeng's body, while the ground rat spirit ground rat continued to absorb the spiritual energy in his body. This caused the spiritual energy in Zhuo Yifeng's body to reach a miraculous equilibrium. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. The ground rat spirit ground rat's body was already brimming with spiritual energy, but when it tried to leave Zhuo Yifeng's body, it found that it was impossible. The spiritual energy began to flow into the ground rat spirit ground rat's body as if it were an exit. The ground rat spirit ground rat struggled with all its might for 2 days and 2 nights, but it still couldn't escape. Just as it was on the verge of death, it opened its mouth to talk to Zhuo Yifeng. "Sir, if this continues, we'll both die," it said. "Little bastard, you've caused me so much trouble," Zhuo Yifeng said. "I never thought that I, Zhuo Yifeng, would die at the hands of a little bastard like you." "Sir, I have a way that might save both of us," the ground rat spirit ground rat said. "What is it?" Zhuo Yifeng asked. He still had many things to do. If he didn't have to die, he would do his best to survive. "I'll teach you the only technique I know. Use it to transfer the excess spiritual energy in your body to someone else," the ground rat spirit ground rat said. "After you learn it, go to the forest and catch any magical beast you can and transfer the spiritual energy in your body to it. Although the heavenly spirit fruit produces a lot of spiritual energy, there's still a limit. As long as we can hold on until the heavenly spirit fruit runs out of spiritual energy, we'll be able to survive." Both of them were in dire straits. Zhuo Yifeng had no other choice but to agree to the ground rat spirit ground rat's suggestion. The ground rat spirit ground rat immediately taught Zhuo Yifeng the technique that allowed him to absorb and transfer spiritual energy from others. Zhuo Yifeng stumbled out of his hiding place, his body brimming with spiritual energy. After taking a few steps, he collapsed to the ground, unable to get up. However, the spiritual energy in his body had attracted the attention of a hunting demon wolf nearby. The demon wolf slowly approached Zhuo Yifeng. "Wake up, sir, wake up." The ground rat sensed danger and bit Zhuo Yifeng's shoulder. Zhuo Yifeng woke up from the pain. He turned around and saw the head of a giant demon wolf in front of him. Without a word, Zhuo Yifeng reached out without warning and placed his palm on the demon wolf's head. Circulating the technique, he transferred a large amount of spiritual energy to the demon wolf. The demon wolf was shocked at first, then felt a large amount of spiritual energy flow from the human in front of it into its own body. Although it didn't understand what was happening, it enjoyed this effortless flow of spiritual energy. In the end, it sat down. On the way back, Xuanhuan and Liemo saw Guanruliu, who was still waiting for them in Zhuo Yifeng by the canyon. Guanruliu informed the two of Zhuo Yifeng's situation in the hinterlands. Without any delay, the two immediately returned to the hinterlands to search for Zhuo Yifeng. After 2 days and 2 nights of searching, the two finally found Zhuo Yifeng in the depths of the hinterlands. When Xuanhuan and Liemo found Zhuo Yifeng, he was still unconscious. Beside him lay a demonic wolf that had been killed by spiritual energy, and a hamster spirit that they couldn't get rid of was clinging to him. "Liemo, what's wrong with Zhuo Yifeng?" Xuanhuan asked anxiously. Liemo looked at Zhuo Yifeng, then at the ground rat spirit ground rat. He also consumed a heavenly spirit fruit, but he didn't have an expert to protect him, nor did he know how to condense spiritual energy. As a result, he suffered a cultivation deviation, Liemo explained. "Cultivation deviation?" Xuanhuan exclaimed. "Cultivation deviation was a very dangerous thing to do. Can he be saved, Liemo? Can you save him?" I don't know how he survived, but since I'm here, I can't let him die. Liemo replied. Zhui Feng was deep in slumber when he suddenly felt a surge of mental energy barge into his mind, calling out to him incessantly. Zhui Feng, wake up, wake up. Who are you? Zhui Feng asked. Instead of answering his question, the voice continued, you have a large amount of spiritual energy in your body, and I'm going to teach you a technique to condense spiritual energy to aid you in breaking through. The voice immediately began to teach him a technique to condense spiritual energy. Zhui Feng began to cultivate in his half-conscious state. He didn't know how much time had passed, but he finally managed to gather all the spiritual energy in his body into his spiritual vortex, successfully advancing from a 7th-rank blade master to an 8th-rank blade master. Brother Zhua, Brother Zhua. A familiar voice rang out by his ear, and Zhui Feng opened his eyes to see an excited face. Brother Zhua, you're finally awake. Her round, adorable face was still streaked with tears. Qingxue, why are you here? Zhui Feng asked in surprise. Where am I? Zhui Feng's memory was still stuck in the forest of giant trees, where the impact of the demonic wolf's explosion had caused him to pass out. This is the Central College, your own room. Lin Qingxue helped him up. My own room? Zhui Feng looked around. Sure enough, the furnishings and environment were familiar. This was none other than his room. Why am I lying in my own room? Wasn't I supposed to continue my training in a different dimension? Zhui Feng's memory was broken and he was confused. As a result, Lin Qingxue told Zhui Feng in detail how Yunruoyan and Liemo had brought him back, as well as how he had been bedridden for 2 to 3 days. Only then did Zhui Feng realize that he had been saved by Yunruoyan and Liemo. He recalled the voice in his head that had called itself, this king. It was none other than the slaughtering king, Liemo. He was the one who saved me. Zhui Feng thought to himself. Brother Zhuo, what's wrong? You look so pale. I'll go find a doctor to take a look at you. Just as Lin Qingxue was about to leave, Zhui Feng grabbed her and asked, where are Yunruoyan and Master Mo? In the main hall. Lin Qingxue revealed a worried expression. Guan Tianyu of the Northern College is dead. Rong Yueshan and the others insist that it was Sister Ruoyan who killed him, and the second elder is making things difficult for the Southern College, demanding that Sister Ruoyan pay with her life. What? Guan Tianyu's dead. Zhui Feng sat up on the bed. That's right, and the Northern College has even accused you of being the murderer, Lin Qingxue replied. Chapter 273. All 6 elders were present in the Great Hall. The first elder sat at the head of the table, while the other 5 sat on either side of him. The executors sat on either side while Liemo sat on the right. In the middle of the hall stood 5 people, Yun Ruoyan and Guan Ruliu. Beside them, Rong Yueshan, Yi Qianying and Pei Zio stood together. The facts are clear for all to see. The second elder's face was extremely ugly, and as he spoke, he glared fiercely at Yun Ruoyan, as if he couldn't wait to tear Yun Ruoyan into pieces. Yun Ruoyan killed Guan Tianyu, and I'll make her pay with her life. Second elder, the matter is still under investigation, and we can't come to a conclusion just yet, the first elder replied. What's there to investigate? Rong Yueshan, Yi Qianying and Pei Zio all saw it with their own eyes. Are you trying to cover up for a murderer? The second elder stood up from his seat. Second elder. Liemo stood up from his seat. May I ask who told you that Yun Ruoyan was Guan Tianyu's murderer? Liemo's gaze swept across Rong Yueshan's group of 3. The 3 of us reported it to the second elder, Rong Yueshan said, stepping forward. Senior brother Guan was killed by Yun Ruoyan. You're slandering us. Guan Ruliu couldn't help but speak up. When the 4 of you separated from us, Guan Tianyu was clearly alive and well. Moreover, the 4 of you had left the giant tree forest before us. No one knows what happened between us except the 4 of you. Senior sister Guan, what do you mean? Yi Qianying looked at Guan Ruliu. Are you implying that the 3 of us killed senior brother Guan and framed Yun Ruoyan for it? Guan Ruliu frowned. I didn't say that, but if you had encountered a powerful magical beast along the way, it wouldn't have been impossible for you to abandon Guan Tianyu and escape on your own. Otherwise, why would your corpse be in such a horrible state? Behind Rong Yueshan's group of 3 was a stretcher, and on it was a corpse covered with a white cloth. It was Guan Tianyu. Although the white cloth hadn't been removed, the blood on it was clear how badly the corpse had been damaged. Senior brother Guan's corpse was only destroyed after his death. Pei Zio said in a low voice, it's true that we failed to protect the body, but the treehouse was suddenly attacked by a large number of wild beasts. The three of us fought with all our might but were still injured, not to mention senior brother Guan who had already lost his life. That's just your opinion. Perhaps Guang Tianyu was killed by a wild beast. It's truly your fault for failing to protect him, Guan Ruliu said. Senior brother Guan clearly died from his injuries in a fight with Yin Ruoyan, and then we ran into danger in the treehouse. Senior sister Guan, are you trying to distort the truth? Rong Yueshan shouted at Guan Ruliu. That's enough. The great elder patted the armrest of his seat, and everyone in the main hall immediately quietened down. Send one person from each side and tell us what happened in detail. Thus, Rong Yueshan told him everything that had happened. As the target of the accusation, it wasn't convenient for Yun Ruoyan to speak, so Guan Ruliu explained the situation. Both sides' accounts were roughly the same. Yun Ruoyan had killed Song Yi and Sun Yen, and severely injured Guan Tianyu, blinding him. Then Liemo arrived and Rong Yueshan, Sun Yen and Guan Tianyu were ordered back to the treehouse. However, both sides focused on different points of view. Rong Yueshan emphasized that Yun Ruoyan had killed Song Yi and Sun Yen, and had severely injured Guan Tianyu. Guan Ruliu, on the other hand, emphasized that Yun Ruoyan had attacked first, and that Yun Ruoyan had only acted in self-defense. I saw it with my own eyes. When the four of them left, Guang Tianyu's eyes were only injured, not his body, much less his death, Guan Ruliu concluded. But my grandson, the only descendant of the Guan family, died so tragically. Someone has to pay the price. As he spoke, the second elder continued to glare at Yun Ruoyan viciously. Yun Ruoyan and Liemo glanced at each other. Neither of them explained much because both of them felt that something was amiss. When they had arrived at the treehouse in the forest, Rong Yueshan and the others had been attacked by a horde of beasts and low-rank magical beasts, and Guan Tianyu had already died. The three elders had said that Guan Tianyu had died at the hands of magical beasts, and Yun Ruoyan and Liemo hadn't paid much attention to it. However, when Liemo gathered all of the students back at Kongming Academy and met with the second elder, the three elders all changed their story, saying that Guan Tianyu had been killed by Yun Ruoyan first, and that his corpse had been attacked by magical beasts. To Yun Ruoyan and the others this was clearly slander, but to those who weren't in the know, it was a well-founded story. What Yun Ruoyan and Liemo were confused about was why a horde of magical beasts had suddenly attacked the treehouse. The treehouse had been built about 70 to 80 feet above the ground, so the beasts couldn't climb up. Instead, they used their teeth and their bodies to ram into the treehouse, breaking a few of the treehouse's branches. Why would the beasts and low-rank magical beasts suddenly attack Rong Yueshan and the others? Second elder, even if you want to seek justice for your grandson, you have to find out the truth first, don't you? The sixth elder interjected. No matter how anxious you are, you can't accuse the innocent, can you? Yun Ruoyan had saved Zhuo Yifeng from the Central College, and the sixth elder was very grateful to Yun Ruoyan. As a result, he spoke on her behalf. What do you mean? The second elder pointed at the sixth elder. Are you saying that I've wronged Yun Ruoyan? I think that's possible. The sixth elder didn't seem the least bit intimidated by the angry and hurt second elder. The second elder's eyes bulged. So what if I've wronged her? Today I'll punish Yun Ruoyan so that my grandson can rest in peace. Second elder. Liemo suddenly interjected. Give me a day's time and I'll definitely find the culprit and give you an explanation. If you don't agree, it won't be easy for you to touch my disciple. Liemo and the second elder stared at each other for a long time, neither side willing to budge. All right, that's settled, the first elder intervened. Give Liemo and Yun Ruoyan a day and a night to prove their innocence. The second elder had no choice but to compromise. If you can't prove your innocence after a day and a night, what then? If that's the case, I'll take my disciple and let you deal with me as you see fit, second elder. All right. The second elder shouted. In that case, I'll deal with you after a day and a night. Don't even think about escaping, or the Southern College won't let you off even if I have to turn the entire Xuanhuan continent upside down. Let's go. As the second elder led the Southern College away with Guan Tianyu's corpse, the elders and provost from the other colleges followed suit. What do you plan to do? The first elder asked Liemo and Yun Ruoyan after everyone else had left. Liemo glanced at Song Song by his side but didn't speak. The first elder turned to Song Song. Song Song, go to the academy and take a look at the students. In 2 months' time, there'll be a minor examination between the academies, and have them cultivate as much as they can. Song Song nodded and left. As he exited the Great Hall, he subconsciously glanced behind him, wondering how Li Mo and Yun Ruoyan were going to pass the second elder's test. He was looking forward to a good show. Li Mo, why did you want me to send Song Song away? The first elder asked Li Mo after Song Song left. In the first elder's eyes, Song Song had always been his trusted aide. Although Song Song didn't know anything about his relationship with Li Mo, the first elder had always left the management of the academy to Song Song. In general, the first elder trusted Song Song quite a bit. As a result, Li Mo's apparent wariness toward Song Song surprised the first elder. I do have some suspicions about Senior Song Song, but we'll talk about this another time. Right now, I'm going to take Yin to the forest to look for evidence, Li Mo said. Li Mo brought Yun Ruoyan back to the treehouse in the forest of giant trees, which had already collapsed. The giant trees had also been knocked down, and the corpses of dozens of large wild beasts and low-rank beasts lay on the ground. Li Mo and Yun Ruoyan glanced at each other, then each walked up to a beast's head and pried open its eyes. The beast's eyes were murky, not the kind of murkiness one would expect from a dead beast, but one that had lost its mind. As expected. Yun Ruoyan stood up and looked at Li Mo. These beasts have been poisoned by a beast-attracting powder. Li Mo nodded. Both he and Yun Ruoyan had thought of the same thing back in the Great Hall. I wonder who used the beast-attracting powder and why? Li Mo asked. I don't know, Yun Ruoyan replied confidently. But I have a suspect. No, I'm almost certain that she's the one who poisoned the beast. Who is she? He asked. Yi Qianning. Back in the Imperial territory, Yi Qianning managed to lure 2 high-rank beasts over to us with the beast-attracting powder. After this period of study, she must have made some progress in her refinement of the beast-attracting powder. Yun Ruoyan's gaze swept across the carcasses of the wild beasts and beasts. Although they were large, they weren't high-rank. With Yi Qianning's current abilities, it wouldn't be difficult for her to lure these beasts over, and of all the students, she's the most likely culprit. In that case, all that's left is the motive. Li Mo followed Yun Ruoyan's hypothesis. Why would she want to lure the beasts over to attack herself? Yun Ruoyan frowned, deep in thought. She was certain that Yi Qianning had lured these beasts over, but she couldn't quite understand her motive. Why would she do that? Surely it wasn't because she was tired of living and wanted to kill herself, but why? Perhaps he's trying to hide something. Just as Yun Ruoyan was lost in thought, Li Mo suddenly spoke up. Chapter 274. What was Yi Qianning trying to hide by attracting the beasts? Yun Ruoyan and Li Mo continued to think along these lines. Suddenly Yun Ruoyan's eyes brightened as she thought of a possibility. Could it be to cover up Guan Tianyu's death? Just as Yun Ruoyan thought of this, so did Li Mo, and the two of them spoke at almost the same time. If it's to cover up Guan Tianyu's death, then there must be more to it than meets the eye. Let's head back and investigate. Right, we can't let Yi Qianning escape this time. Yun Ruoyan agreed. Within Rong Tianhai's residence in the Northern College, Rong Yueshan, Yi Qianning, and Pei Zio faced Rong Tianhai, their heads lowered in silence. You said that you've obtained the spirit artifact, but where is it now? Rong Tianhai asked, his face ashen. Third uncle, we did indeed obtain the spirit artifact according to your plan, Rong Yueshan replied. But it was in Guan Tianyu's hands the entire time. When we arrived at the treehouse, I asked him to hand it over to me for safekeeping, but he refused. Then, in the middle of the night, we were suddenly attacked by a horde of wild beasts and low-rank beasts. We were so busy dealing with the beasts that we didn't notice Guan Tianyu. Who would have thought that he would die to the beast? Master Rong, the spirit artifact could have escaped while the beasts were attacking Guan Tianyu, Yi Qianning said carefully, as if afraid of angering Rong Tianhai. Rong Tianhai was truly enraged. The spirit artifact was incredibly difficult to find and obtain. He had waited for an opportunity with great difficulty and used an ingenious plan to make the demon treasure fall into the net that he had set up, but in the end, an unforeseen event occurred and the demon treasure disappeared without a trace. If he didn't get his hands on the spirit artifact this time, perhaps he wouldn't have another chance in this lifetime. However, this was only one of the reasons for his anger. What made him even angrier was that Rong Yueshan and the others had dared to blame Yun Ruoyan for Guan Tianyu's death, only revealing the truth now. In that case, Guan Tianyu really did die to the beasts and not from some serious injury? Rong Tianhai asked sternly. The few of them didn't say anything, which was a tacit agreement. How dare you all? Not only did you lie to me, you even dared to lie to the second elder. Rong Tianhai bellowed when he saw that no one was speaking. Third uncle Yun Ruoyan's getting more and more arrogant. and she even has Master Mo's protection. If we don't use this opportunity to provoke the second elder into dealing with her, we really don't have any other choice." When Rong Tianhai heard Rong Yueshan's words, he turned to look at her. "You can use any method to deal with Yun Ruoyan, whether it's legal or illegal. But do you really think you can deceive the second elder?" Rong Tianhai frowned. "The second elder is just grieving for a moment. When he recovers and investigates Guan Tianyu's death, he'll definitely notice something amiss. And now that Li Mo is involved, do you really think you can fool both Li Mo and the second elder at the same time? The second elder hates it when people lie to him, and once your lies are exposed, he'll be the first to punish you." When Rong Yueshan had discovered Guan Tianyu's corpse, she'd also been tempted to shift the blame to the second elder. She hadn't thought of anything else, and now that Rong Tianhai had mentioned it, she couldn't help but worry. "Third uncle, what should we do now?" Rong Yueshan asked anxiously. "Master Rong, you have to help us," Pei Zio urged. Although Yi Qianying hadn't said anything, she was the most uneasy of the three. Would the second elder really discover the lies they had fabricated? And what about her lies? Would the second elder discover them as well? "Go back first and I'll think about what to do." Rong Tianhai sighed. "If the time comes, I'll confess to the second elder on your behalf and ask him to punish you leniently." The three of them left Rong Tianhai's courtyard and returned to their own rooms. As soon as Yi Qianying entered her room, she shut all the doors and windows, then took out a pendant that hung around her neck. The pendant seemed to be shining with a golden light, as if it was just a rather expensive piece of jewelry. However, in reality, it was an extremely precious spatial spirit tool. It had been given to her by the Yi family as part of her dowry, and could be considered a family heirloom. Most spatial artifacts, such as Yun Ruoyan's and Li Mo's storage rings, could only store inanimate objects. Something like Yun Ruoyan's silver bracelet, which could store a living creature like Qiu, was exceedingly rare. This spatial pendant, however, could do just that. Yi Qianying placed the pendant in her palm. With a single thought, a red cloth bag appeared in her palm. Yi Qianying opened the bag and revealed a jade-green human-shaped plant. This human-shaped plant was none other than the wild vine spirit's spirit artifact. The spirit artifact's eyes were closed, as if it were in a deep slumber. No one knew what Yi Qianying had done to it. Yi Qianying opened a packet of medicinal powder, then used a small wooden stick to scoop up some of the powder and placed it under the spirit artifact's nose. The spirit artifact immediately sneezed and woke up. When it opened its eyes, it immediately bit at Yi Qianying fiercely. Yi Qianying's eyes were sharp, and she quickly put the spirit artifact back into its pouch. "Little thing," Yi Qianying said viciously. "In order to get my hands on you, I even killed Guan Tianyu. You'd better acknowledge me as your master, or I won't go easy on you." As it turned out, Yi Qianying had long since coveted the spirit artifact. Her cultivation was the lowest among the students, only an early 5th-rank blade master. Her talent for cultivation wasn't particularly high, and it was nearly impossible for her to become a strong cultivator through her own efforts. Although Yi Qianying was very talented at concocting all sorts of poisons, her cultivation was too low to become a pill master or even a poisoner. As a result, when Yi Qianying saw the spirit artifact, she had a strong desire to take it for herself. If she could become the spirit artifact's master, she would have the abilities of a wild vine spirit, and she would have the ability to become strong and exact her revenge on Yun Ruoyan. Although Yi Qianying looked weak and harmless, her heart was cold and vicious. Once she had this thought, she would immediately find an opportunity to carry it out. When she blinded Guan Tianyu, Yi Qianying felt as if the heavens were helping her. That night, when the four of them returned to the treehouse to rest, Yi Qianying drugged Rong Yueshan and the others. However, Yi Qianying didn't find the spirit artifact on Guan Tianyu's body, so she woke him up and impersonated a different voice to interrogate him. Guan Tianyu's lips were tightly sealed, and Yi Qianying began torturing him. Unable to bear the pain, Guan Tianyu finally handed over the spirit artifact. As he was handing over the spirit artifact, Guan Tianyu suddenly attacked Yi Qianying, but she accidentally killed him. Afterwards, in order to cover up her crime, Yi Qianying used beast-attracting powder to attract magical beasts to attack them, then sprinkled more on Guan Tianyu's corpse to make it seem as if he had been bitten to death by a magical beast. Neither Rong Yueshan nor Pei Zio knew of any of this. When Rong Yueshan saw Guan Tianyu's corpse, she naturally assumed that he had been bitten to death by a magical beast, and naturally began to think that Yun Ruoyan was the culprit. The spirit artifact wasn't so easy to tame, and Yi Qianying was unable to do so after much effort. In the end, she could only put it back into her pocket dimension. Exhausted, Qianying blew out the candle and went to bed. Just as Qianying was about to blow out the candle, two figures floated down from her rooftop. Liemo and Yun Ruoyan glanced at each other, and Liemo flew her toward the southern tower. So, did you find any evidence to prove your innocence? The great elder had been waiting for the two of them on the second floor of the southern tower. When he saw the two of them returning on their flying swords, he went to greet them. Not only did we find evidence, but we also found the real culprit, Liemo replied. Oh, who is it? The great elder immediately asked. Qianying, Yun Ruoyan replied. She told the first elder about what they had discovered in the forest of giant trees, as well as what they had seen and heard on Qianying's roof. We heard Qianying say with our own ears that she killed Guan Tianyu for the spirit artifact. What's going on with the demonic treasure? The great elder asked in confusion. I killed a wild vine spirit in the forest, Liemo explained. The spirit artifact looked like it belonged to a wild vine spirit. We killed the wild vine spirit, but the spirit artifact is in their hands. Yun Ruoyan looked at Liemo thoughtfully. You're right, we've been used. Liemo crossed his arms in front of his chest. This is the first time in my life that I've been used by someone. Not only did they use me, but they even tried to frame Yen as the culprit. Interesting. Yun Ruoyan knew Liemo well. His tone and expression were calm, but his heart wasn't. Liemo wouldn't let anyone who had offended him off so easily. But I don't think it's Qianying's doing. Yun Ruoyan thought for a moment. Based on my understanding of her, she wouldn't be able to do such a thing. Based on what you've said, I'm afraid this isn't the work of a single person, the first elder added. That's right. Otherwise, Qianying wouldn't have kept the spirit artifact for herself. No matter who's behind this, I'll get to the bottom of this tomorrow at the Great Hall. The next morning, Yun Ruoyan walked out of her room, preparing to head to the southern tower to find Liemo. On her way there, she ran into Zhuo Yifeng, who had come looking for her. Those who had been selected for the training were no longer required to attend classes at the academy, and their time was freely allocated when they weren't training. Zhuo Yifeng, Yun Ruoyan greeted him from afar. How are you doing? Chapter 275. I'm fine now. Zhuo Yifeng walked up to her. And I've already become an 8th rank blade master. Congratulations then. Yun Ruoyan was genuinely happy for him. Once you're an 8th rank blade master, you won't have to eat those pesky pills anymore. I have to thank you for coming back to save me. Zhuo Yifeng looked at Yun Ruoyan. I thought I'd die there. Yun Ruoyan paused for a moment. Actually, Liemo was the one who saved you. My abilities were limited, and I wouldn't have been able to save you even if I wanted to. I know. Zhuo Yifeng smiled awkwardly. Senior Sister Guan told me all about it. By this time, some of the other female students had already woken up and were cultivating. When they saw Yun Ruoyan and Zhuo Yifeng standing on the path, they couldn't help but look toward them. The two of them had worked together to defeat Guan Tianyu in the plaza, so many of the students recognized them. Furthermore, Guan Tianyu had died during the training, and Yun Ruoyan had been deemed a murderer by the Northern College. As a result, Yun Ruoyan was known by everyone in the small courtyard. It's getting late. I'm going to look for Liemo now. Do you want to come with me? Yun Ruoyan asked Zhuo Yifeng. The second elder and the others will still be looking for you today, right? Zhuo Yifeng asked. Yun Ruoyan nodded, but didn't reveal the fact that she and Liemo were being investigated. First, they were going to reveal the results of their investigation in front of a large crowd, so Yun Ruoyan didn't feel that it was necessary. Second, she really was in a hurry to find Liemo. All right. Zhuo Yifeng nodded. I'll go with you. As the two of them walked out of the courtyard, they ran into the Lin sisters who had caught up to them. The two of them had heard about Yun Ruoyan's situation, and they had wanted to follow her to the Great Hall, but Yun Ruoyan insisted that they return to the academy. Unable to dissuade her, the two of them had no choice but to obediently head to class. Yun Ruoyan and Zhuo Yifeng headed to the southern tower to look for Liemo before heading to the Great Hall. Liemo and Yun Ruoyan walked side by side, while Zhuo Yifeng followed behind them. Zhuo Yifeng knew that his life had been saved by Liemo, and that he was the one who had taught him the method to condense spiritual energy. However, he noticed that Liemo didn't seem to take this matter to heart. After seeing him, Liemo only glanced at him coolly, treating him as if he were an insignificant person. Zhuo Yifeng understood Liemo's condescending attitude, but even so, he was still hurt by Liemo's attitude. He was saved by his enemy, but this enemy didn't even put him in his eyes. This was undoubtedly a form of contempt and humiliation to Zhuifeng. As he watched Yun Ruoyan and Liu Mo walk side by side, Zhuifeng lowered his head, tightly gripping the bough on his back. By the time Zhang Xian arrived at the main hall, the second elder, Rong Tianhai, Rong Yueshan, and the others from the north hall had already arrived. In the center of the hall, Guan Tianyu's corpse was still lying on the stretcher. However, there were many spiritual herbs, pills and high-grade beast cores placed around the corpse to prevent it from rotting. Liu Mo, Yun Ruoyan, and Zhuifeng calmly walked past the stretcher and bowed to the second elder. The second elder snorted, glaring at Yun Ruoyan with a murderous glare. When he had returned to the Northern College yesterday, he had intended to carefully examine Guan Tianyu's injuries, but every time he saw the mangled remains of Guan Tianyu's body, he couldn't suppress the grief in his heart. As a result, he hadn't done so. As a result, even now, the second elder still didn't know the true cause of his grandson's death. However, Guan Tianyu's eyes, which had been blinded by fire-attuned spiritual energy, had been examined more than once by the second elder. At first, the second elder had suspected that Yun Ruoyan had been able to unleash such powerful spiritual energy, but Rong Yueshan and the others had seen it with their own eyes, and Yun Ruoyan didn't deny it. Moreover, Yun Ruoyan had Liu Mo as her teacher, and the second elder had never been able to see through Liu Mo. Perhaps Liu Mo really had taught Yun Ruoyan a new technique. When Rong Tianhai saw the second elder's sorrowful expression, he was shocked. He had been a disciple of the second elder for more than 20 years, and his impression of the second elder had always been one of coldness and indifference. Even though he doted on Guan Tianyu, he rarely showed it in words or actions. Even on the surface he was cold and strict toward Rong Tianhai. Contrary to Rong Tianhai's expectations, Guan Tianyu's death seemed to have transformed the second elder into a completely different person. Rong Tianhai had originally intended to find an opportunity to tell the second elder about Rong Yueshan and the others' lies, but when he saw the second elder's state, he hesitated. The second elder had already treated Yun Ruoyan as the murderer of his grandson. If he were to tell him that Yun Ruoyan wasn't the murderer, then his grief and hatred would be transferred to someone else, and Rong Yueshan would be severely punished. Since that's the case, why don't we go all the way? If we're certain that Yun Ruoyan is Guan Tianyu's murderer, then we'll have to pin the crime on Yun Ruoyan no matter what. These were Rong Tianhai's words to Rong Yueshan and the others. Yun Ruoyan, you killed senior brother Guan. This time you'll have to pay for what you've done. Yi Qianying exclaimed as soon as Yun Ruoyan stood in front of the Great Hall. When Yun Ruoyan saw Yi Qianying's feigned grief and indignation, she really wanted to ask her how she'd managed to do it. Even Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but be impressed by Yi Qianying's ability to play the game. Don't worry. Yun Ruoyan suddenly smiled at Yi Qianying. Of course, the real murderer will naturally have to pay for what he did. Yi Qianying, remember, justice has long arms, and it's not that the time hasn't come yet. As Yun Ruoyan smiled, she motioned for Yi Qianying to look at Guan Tianyu. What do you mean? Yi Qianying couldn't help but panic. Yun Ruoyan laughed coldly again, then turned her gaze away from Yi Qianying and ignored her. If not for the fact that Liu Mo wanted to use Yi Qianying to uncover the mastermind behind their actions, the two of them would have caught Yi Qianying in the act last night. Yun Ruoyan's smile made Yi Qianying feel a pang of guilt. What's going on? Has Yun Ruoyan found out the truth? No, Yi Qianying consoled herself. Yi Qianying then comforted herself. No one will know what I'm doing. No one will find out. Although she consoled herself this way, she didn't dare to be arrogant. Instead, she hid behind Rong Yueshan and Pei Zio, waiting to see what would happen next. About 15 minutes later, the elders and provost arrived at the Great Hall. Apart from the elders and provost, the students who had participated in the training had also arrived. The Great Hall was much livelier than it had been the day before. Junior Ruoyan. Guan Ruliu walked up to Yun Ruoyan's side, clearly on her side. After Guan Ruliu walked up to Yun Ruoyan's side, a few other students followed suit. These were all students who were on good terms with Yun Ruoyan, and most of them were from the Southern College, but a few were from other colleges. Yun Ruoyan, we believe that you're not the murderer. Yes, we believe you. Although Yun Ruoyan was confident this time, she still felt warm from the bottom of her heart at the trust and support of these students. In contrast, the students from the Northern College were all looking at Yun Ruoyan with hatred. In their hearts, they were certain that Yun Ruoyan was the murderer. Why are there so many students here? The first elder frowned. I told them to come, the second elder replied. The second elder looked at the crowd below and said, I want them to personally witness the consequences of harming their fellow disciples. Cut the crap, everyone. The second elder called out to the crowd. We'll begin the trial of Yun Ruoyan. The second elder's first sentence was to put Yun Ruoyan on trial, which meant that Yun Ruoyan was guilty of murder. Wait. The second elder was just about to pronounce Yun Ruoyan guilty when Liemo stood up and interrupted him. Second elder, you seem to have forgotten something, Liemo began. In that case, let me remind you that you promised us a day and a night to find evidence to prove our innocence. Have you really forgotten? The second elder was taken aback. He had indeed promised Liemo the day before, but he didn't think that the two of them would be able to find any evidence in a day and a night, so he was a little surprised to hear Liemo say this. Could it be that you've really found some evidence? That's right. Not only have we found evidence to prove my disciple's innocence, but we've also found Guan Tianyu's murderer. Oh. The second elder's eyebrows were deeply furrowed, and he leaned forward, his long thin neck stretching forward as he stared unblinkingly at Liemo with a pair of old, bright eyes. Who's the murderer? The second elder asked. Liemo didn't immediately point out Yi Qianying. Instead, he stood up from his seat and walked toward Rong Yueshan and the rest of the Northern College's students. Yi Qianying had already hidden herself in the crowd, making her presence as inconspicuous as possible. Master Emo, what's the meaning of this? As Liemo approached the Northern College students, Rong Tianhai could no longer sit still. He stood up from his seat and asked Liemo. Liemo stopped in his tracks and turned to look at Rong Tianhai. Instead, he stretched out a hand in the direction of the Northern College's students. Accompanied by a girl's startled cry, a golden pendant flew out from the crowd and into Liemo's hands. This golden pendant was none other than Yi Qianying's spatial pendant, the one that contained the demon treasure. Yi Qianying clutched her neck as she looked at Liemo with fear in her eyes. For a moment, her mind was blank. There were only two words echoing in his blank mind. It's over. Yi Qianying would never have imagined that she would be discovered so easily. Chapter 276. Liemo had taken the locket from Yi Qianying right in front of everyone's eyes, and she couldn't deny it even if she wanted to. With the exception of Yun Ruoyan, everyone present was confused by Liemo's sudden actions. Master Emo, what are you doing? Why did you steal my locket? Please return it to me. Yi Qianying pleaded pitifully. Everyone else also looked at Liemo in confusion. Senior brother, what are you trying to do? Rong Tianhai asked the question on everyone's mind. Didn't you want evidence? Liemo showed the locket in his hand to everyone present. This is the evidence. Isn't this just a locket that Yi Qianying was wearing? How is it evidence? Rong Yueshan was confused. Her confusion was the same as everyone else's, and all eyes were on Liemo. It looks like an ordinary locket, but it's actually a spatial weapon, Liemo explained. Even if it's a spatial weapon, what does that prove? Pei Zio, however, took a step forward and said, most of the people here have spatial spirit tools. Of course it doesn't prove anything, but this isn't an ordinary one. It can store living things such as spirit treasures. As Liemo spoke, his gaze swept across the second elder and Rong Tianhai's faces. When the two of them heard his words, they both revealed shocked expressions. However, the second elder looked more confused than shocked. What spirit treasure? What does this have to do with my grandson's death? Liemo, explain yourself. The second elder blurted out. Rong Tianhai, on the other hand, opened his mouth in shock. He looked deeply at Yi Qianying, his face full of disbelief. Yun Ruoyan had said that Yi Qianying didn't have such a grand plan, so she had to have someone backing her. Liemo guessed that Yi Qianying's backer was either the second elder or Rong Tianhai. Neither of them had any intention of harming Guan Tianyu, so Liemo's guess was that one of them would have Rong Yueshan and Yi Qianying kill the wild vine spirit, then reap the rewards. After obtaining the spirit beast, Guan Tianyu had been the one to keep it safe, but Yi Qianying had secretly tried to take it for herself. She'd killed Guan Tianyu while trying to steal it, and that was how she'd managed to lure the beasts over to cover up Guan Tianyu's death. When Liemo saw Rong Tianhai's and the second elder's expressions, he was certain that the person behind the curtains was Rong Tianhai, not the second elder. Second elder, as the leader of this trial, I will definitely give you an explanation for Guan Tianyu's death. As Liemo spoke, he used his spiritual energy to forcefully open the spatial locket in his hand, and a red cloth bag appeared in his palm. This is the demonic treasure of the wild vine demon. As soon as the red cloth bag appeared, Rong Yueshan and Pei Zio both looked toward Yi Qianying, and Rong Tianhai's face was as dark as ice. Rong Yueshan and Pei Zio had seen Guan Tianyu use this red cloth bag to store the demonic treasure, but the second elder was even more familiar with it. This was a spiritual weapon that he'd forged specifically for dealing with demonic treasures. Yi Qianying's heart trembled, and her body began to sway uncontrollably. Once this matter was exposed, she would die without a burial ground. At this moment, she felt despair that she had never felt before. Senior brother, what does this demonic treasure mean? Just as Yi Qianying was feeling hopeless, Rong Tianhai suddenly turned to Liu Mo. All it means is that Yi Qianying was lucky enough to obtain a demonic treasure during the trial, Rong Tianhai replied. Rong Tianhai looked at Liu Mo, feigning casualness. Just like in the previous trial, when Yun Ruoyan was lucky enough to obtain the Amaranthan Sun. Our academy has a rule that no matter what treasures a student obtains in the alternate dimension, they can keep them for themselves. Senior brother, don't tell me you've taken a fancy to this demonic treasure and want to keep it for yourself? Liu Mo frowned as he looked toward Rong Tianhai. He quickly understood Rong Tianhai's intentions. He was trying to twist the facts to protect Yi Qianying. More accurately, Rong Tianhai was trying to protect himself. Regardless of how Yi Qianying had obtained the demonic treasure, it had been in Guan Tianyu's possession, and now it was in Yi Qianying's possession. Rong Tianhai didn't know how Yi Qianying had managed to obtain the demonic treasure from Guan Tianyu, but based on his understanding of Guan Tianyu, he wouldn't have given it to anyone so easily, unless Yi Qianying had used some cruel method to force him to do so. Rong Tianhai didn't dare to think any further. Just one demonic treasure doesn't mean anything, Liu Mo replied. Liu Mo looked at Rong Tianhai sharply. I killed a tree spirit in the forest, and this spirit treasure belonged to that tree spirit. Rong Tianhai wanted to continue, but Liu Mo didn't give him the chance. Of course, that doesn't mean anything, but I entered the Trent's territory to kill it because a few students from the Southern College were trapped by a tree ant, and they were trapped because someone had lured them into the Trent's lair. Liu Mo turned to Guan Ruliu. You're the victim, so tell everyone what happened. Guan Ruliu stepped forward and explained in detail how she and her two junior brothers had been poisoned by the miasma and how they had been caught by the wild vine monster. After I was poisoned, I heard Yi Qianying's voice, so I suspected that we'd been set up, Guan Ruliu confessed. You're slandering me? What does it have to do with me that you were poisoned and trapped by the wild vine spirit? Don't even think about slandering me. Yi Qianying retorted agitatedly. Just a moment ago, Yi Qianying had thought that she was doomed. Unexpectedly, Rong Tianhai had suddenly spoken up for her, and Yi Qianying had seen a glimmer of hope. At the time, Master Mo Zhuifeng and I entered the miasma together and found senior sister Guan and her two seniors. Yun Ruoyan finally spoke up. As the key figure in this incident, Yun Ruoyan's words immediately attracted everyone's attention. According to Master Mo's and my experience, the miasma wasn't natural but man-made, Yun Ruoyan continued. Combined with senior sister Guan's claim that she heard Yi Qianying's voice, it's not hard to imagine that Yi Qianying must have poisoned the three juniors and lured them into the wild vine spirit's lair. You're talking nonsense. Yi Qianying exclaimed anxiously. She turned to Rong Yueshan and Pei Zio anxiously. Say something. Tell everyone that this isn't true. I was with you the entire time. How could I have poisoned Guan Ruliu and the others by myself? Rong Yueshan and Pei Zio chose to remain silent. The two of them weren't fools. Just the fact that Yi Qianying had managed to obtain a spirit artifact without their knowledge was enough to disappoint them. Although Rong Tianhai had spoken up to protect Yi Qianying, it was clearly because he didn't want to be implicated. Naturally, the two of them wouldn't risk their lives to prove anything to Yi Qianying. That's not all, Yun Ruoyan continued. Yesterday, Master Mo and I returned to the forest to look for evidence. Only then did we discover that the beasts and wild beasts that had suddenly gone berserk had been poisoned by the beast-attracting powder. This is also man-made. Yun Ruoyan's gaze swept past Yi Qianying, and the crowd followed her gaze to Yi Qianying. Some of them had been affected by the beast's attack, and 2 or 3 of them had died as a result. They had thought that the beast had suddenly gone berserk, but it turned out to be man-made. Even the Northern College's students were filled with anger. First Elder, before we entered the training grounds, Master Mo had warned us not to kill one another in the training. However, there were actually people who intentionally harmed their fellow disciples. You must seek justice for those who were harmed. That's right, the culprit must be punished severely. The students angrily pleaded with the First Elder. Silence everyone. The First Elder turned to Yun Ruoyan. What else did you discover? Continue. Yes, First Elder, Yun Ruoyan replied. As soon as you mentioned the beast-attracting powder, I recalled that during the Imperial expedition, Xianxia had used it to attract two high-rank beasts to attack me. As a result, I suspect that Xianxia was the culprit this time. Xuanhuan and Liemo were purposely pinning all the blame on Xianxia. If they were to expose Rong Yueshan, Pei Zio, and even Rong Tianhai in front of everyone, the Northern College would suffer greatly. Even the second elder, despite his grief, had to consider the consequences. If he were to retaliate, Xuanhuan and Limeo's goal would be very difficult to achieve. And if they were to pin all the blame on Xianxia, the second elder wouldn't fall out over her. As expected, even Rong Tianhai changed his stance when all the blame was placed on Xianxia. Xianxia. Rong Tianhai pointed at Xianxia. Is Xuanhuan speaking the truth? Xianxia was taken aback by Rong Tianhai's sudden question. Rong Tianhai continued, "You've harmed your fellow disciples over and over again. As the administrator of the Northern College, I will not let you off lightly." At first, Rong Tianhai thought that Liemo would expose him, but Liemo clearly had no intention of doing so. In that case, Rong Tianhai would rather Xianxia be the scapegoat. Moreover, Xianxia truly deserved to die for harming Guantianyu. Xianxia, on the other hand, was in a daze. She had caused Guantianyu's death in order to obtain the beast spirit artifact, and it was indeed difficult for her to escape punishment. However, judging from the current situation, it seemed that everyone had colluded to push all the blame onto her head. She looked toward Pei Zio and Rong Yueshan, who were also looking back at her coldly. The surrounding Northern College students had all distanced themselves from her, and she was completely isolated. Chapter 277. Xianxia, are you still not going to plead guilty? Rong Tianhai shouted at her once more. Aye. Xianxia was still hesitating, but Rong Yueshan crept up behind her and whispered, "Hurry up and plead guilty before the truth of senior brother Guan's death is revealed." Xianxia's heart trembled at Rong Yueshan's words. Only then did she realize that although she was guilty of harming a fellow disciple, it was still better than being punished by the second elder for killing Guantianyu. "I plead guilty." Xianxia finally knelt down in the great hall. At this moment, the great elder stood up from his seat and said, "Then, First Elder, it was my fault for not teaching my students well enough to allow such a traitor to appear in the Northern College. Please allow me to bring Xianxia back to the Hall of Penitence and punish her severely." As soon as the great elder opened his mouth, he was interrupted by the second elder. "What about the murderer? My poor grandson died in the jaws of magical beasts. Xianxia was the one who attracted those beasts, so naturally she has to bear the blame." "In that case, does that mean she's cleared of her crimes?" the first elder asked. "Naturally," the second elder replied. "Since the truth has come to light, please allow me to take my leave." The second elder led a group of Northern College students out of the Great Hall, carrying Guantianyu's corpse and Xianxia with them. Some of the other elders and executors were confused, but others had some inkling of what was going on. However, it was best for them not to worry about it. After the second elder left, the rest of the students followed suit. "Zhuifeng, you haven't even recovered from your injuries, so why are you running around?" the sixth elder chided Zhuifeng before leaving. Right now, Zhuifeng was like a treasure to the Central College. After returning from the forest, he had become an 8th-rank blade master. He was definitely one of the cream of the crop, whether it was in the Central College or the other academies. The Central College had never produced such a talented student, so how could the sixth elder not dote on him? "Hurry up and come back with me. I still need to properly nurse you back to health." Zhuifeng turned to Xuanhuan, who smiled at him. "I'm fine now, so you and the sixth elder should head back. Rest well and we'll have the next trial soon." After Zhuifeng left, Liemo, Xuanhuan, and the first elder also left the Great Hall for the Southern Tower. "Why did you let Xianxia off so easily this time? And Rong Tianhai, Pei Zio, and Rong Yueshan, I'm sure they won't be able to escape responsibility this time either." Although Xuanhuan had successfully cleared her name, she still felt it was a pity that she hadn't been able to capture all of her enemies in one fell swoop. "There are some things that don't need to be done openly," Liemo replied. "We just need to be careful." "What do you mean?" Xuanhuan didn't quite understand what Liemo was getting at. "If we can think of it, the second elder will naturally be able to think of it as well. The second elder is a person who cares about his reputation, so we don't need to tear apart his face. His methods of cleaning up the sect are no less ruthless than yours and mine. If we tear apart his face and he retaliates, it won't be to our advantage," the first elder continued. Li Mo and the first elder smiled at each other, and Yun Ruoyan understood what they were implying. Yi Qianying was locked up in the Hall of Penitence by the second elder's command. Rong Tianhai, Rong Yueshan, and Pei Zio were given a private lecture by the second elder. As soon as they entered the room, the second elder turned around and slapped Rong Tianhai across the face. This slap was clearly imbued with spiritual energy, and Rong Tianhai almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, Pei Zio supported him from behind. All of you kneel. The second elder's face was frighteningly dark. Rong Tianhai reacted and knelt down first, followed by Pei Zio and Rong Yueshan. What's the deal with the spirit artifact? The second elder barked. Before Rong Tianhai could respond, the second elder continued, You know my temper. Don't try to deceive me. I wouldn't dare. Rong Tianhai kowtowed to the ground. Then he recounted how he had taught Rong Yueshan and the others to use Li Mo to obtain the spirit artifact. Rong Yueshan and Pei Zio filled in the rest. That spirit artifact was always with senior brother Guan, and we don't know when Yi Qianying obtained it, Rong Yueshan replied. But we suspect that senior brother Guan's death has something to do with Yi Qianying. The second elder snorted. What do you mean by, something to do with senior brother Guan's death? None of you can escape responsibility for my grandson's death. All of you, go to the Hall of Penitence and accept your punishment. The three of them lowered their heads, not daring to argue. Then what should we do with Yi Qianying? Rong Tianhai asked carefully. Should we just... Rong Tianhai made a murderous gesture. Wouldn't that be letting her off lightly? From now on, lock her in the Hall of Penitence's water dungeon and have the unnamed disciples teach her a good lesson. Just don't let her die. After a year, release her and throw her into the other dimension. I don't want to see her ever again. Within the prison, Yi Qianying curled up in a corner of her cell, her large, lifeless eyes staring at the ground. She couldn't help but think back to the moment she saw the wild vine spirit's treasure. She couldn't help but think back to how she had planned to kill Guan Tianyu and lure the wild vine spirit over to cover up the truth. Then Rong Yueshan had framed Yun Ruoyan. Yi Qianying knew that she had taken a huge risk, but it wasn't as if she didn't have a plan. Up until last night, Yi Qianying had felt that her plan had been flawless. Not only had she obtained the spirit artifact, but she had also successfully framed Yun Ruoyan. She couldn't help but feel a little proud of herself. But in the span of a single day, the situation had taken a 180-degree turn. It wasn't Yun Ruoyan who was imprisoned, but Yi Qianying herself. This time she had truly failed miserably. Yi Qianying clutched her head in agony. Just then she heard the door to the cell open. Yi Qianying lifted her head from between her knees and saw two disciples, one fat and one skinny, dressed in gray robes. Senior brothers, what are you doing? Yi Qianying asked uneasily when she saw the sinister expressions on the two men's faces and the malicious smiles on their faces. We're just trying to get this beautiful senior sister to a more comfortable place to rest. The skinny disciple smiled, and Yi Qianying felt that his smile was particularly sinister. She couldn't help saying, No, there's no need to change places. I think this place is pretty good. Ha, the fat disciple laughed. Do you still think of yourself as a guest? Get out of here. The fat disciple roughly pulled the slender Yi Qianying up from the ground and shoved her out of the room. Where are you taking me? Big brothers, can you tell me? Yi Qianying took off an expensive bracelet on her wrist and handed it to the fat disciple, then handed a ring on her right hand to the skinny disciple. Senior brothers, please make an exception. Yi Qianying begged pitifully. The two disciples shook the items in their hands and smiled in satisfaction. We've been ordered to bring you to the water dungeon. We were planning on torturing you before we locked you up, but since you're so smart and sensible, we'll spare you the punishment. They dragged Yi Qianying all the way down to a small pitch-black room, from which a putrid odor wafted out. Through the metal door, Yi Qianying could faintly see a few red-eyed rats crawling around. This is the water dungeon, go in. The skinny disciple pushed Yi Qianying. I don't want to go in, I won't go in. Yi Qianying grabbed the metal door, unwilling to enter. Hey, why are you looking for trouble right after I said you were sensible? Don't force me to use force. Your spiritual energy has been sealed, and you're no different from a commoner. You're definitely no match for us, the fat disciple reminded her. Senior brothers, please do me one last favor, please? Yi Qianying held the metal door tightly. I'm the concubine of the Crown Prince of the Li Kingdom. Please help me inform the Crown Prince as well as Pei Zio of the Northern College, that I'll repay them handsomely. Yun Ruoyan was bathing in a small cottage by the cliff. How comfortable. Xuanhuan submerged herself in the bathtub. After half a month of training in the alternate dimension, she was finally able to enjoy a warm bath. She was so comfortable that she didn't even want to stick her head out of the water. Suddenly, a pair of hands reached into the bathtub, grabbed Xuanhuan's shoulders, and lifted her out of the water. Ah! Xuanhuan yelped, only to see that the person standing in front of the bathtub was none other than Liemo. What are you doing? Xuanhuan subconsciously covered her chest with her hands as she shouted at Liemo. I've been sitting by the window for so long that you didn't come out of the water, and you didn't respond. I was afraid that you'd drown. Liemo's voice grew hoarse as he looked at Xuanhuan's naked body. Have you forgotten that I have this? Xuanhuan pointed at the crystal pearl hanging from her chest. In contrast with the pearl, Xuanhuan's skin seemed as translucent as the pearl, so beautiful that it didn't seem real. Her clean cheeks were as delicate as a peeled egg. At the same time, she looked like a lotus that had just bloomed, and there were still droplets of dew on it. Liemo couldn't help reaching out and caressing Xuanhuan's face. Tomorrow I'll return to the capital to prepare for my marriage proposal. Once you're of age, we'll get married. Liemo looked at Xuanhuan, his eyes burning with passion. Yes. Xuanhuan nodded, a shy smile on her lips. I'll do as you say, Your Highness. Ah! As soon as Xuanhuan finished speaking, her breath was captured by Liemo. After a long deep kiss, Xuanhuan was carried out of the bathtub and onto the bed. Xuanhuan didn't resist in the slightest. Instead, she was as obedient as a bunny, melting into a puddle of water in Liemo's embrace. Xuanhuan wasn't an inexperienced little girl. After such a long time, she had long since been prepared to give herself to Liemo. But in the end, just as the two of them were immersed in lust, Liemo suddenly stopped. He buried his head in Xuanhuan's neck, his voice low and restrained. I've promised you that I'll wait until you're of age and I'll keep my word. Chapter 278. In the darkness of the prison, Qianxia yelled at the top of her lungs, but no one answered her even when her throat was hoarse. Her only companions were the rats in the water dungeon, and a pile of bones in the corner of the water dungeon that had been there for an unknown period of time. Many days passed, but Qianxia still didn't see a single person. Tired of yelling, she hugged her knees and curled up into a ball. In a daze, she sat down on a protruding wall in the corner of the prison to rest. There were only two such walls that were dry in the entire water prison. On the other wall was a perfectly preserved skeleton in a sitting posture, separated from Qianxia by a wall. Time to eat. A familiar voice called out. There was only one meal in the prison every day, and this person was responsible for delivering it to her. Qianxia immediately roused herself when she heard the voice. She climbed down from the wall, waded through the water up to her ankles and walked to the metal door. Brother, is anyone here to see me? Qianxia craned her neck to ask. No, the man replied impatiently. Qianxia had been tormenting herself over the past few days, but she had calmed down a little in the past 2 days. But every time he came to deliver her food, Qianxia would ask him the same question. No, didn't you ask me? I've already given you something. If it's not enough, I have more here. Qianxia fumbled around in her hair, plucking out the last hairpin and handing it to the man. The man accepted the hairpin and smiled. I'll tell you the truth, so just give up. You're currently locked up in the Hall of Penitence's water prison. Do you know what kind of place that is? Only those who have committed unforgivable crimes are locked up here. Once you're in there, you'll only be waiting for death. Who would come here to see you? Qianxia's mouth was agape, but she couldn't say a word. Actually, this wasn't a surprise to her. Li Qianxiao hated her to the core, and he wanted nothing more than for her to die and disappear from his sight. Qianxia had originally harbored a sliver of hope for Pei Zio, but reality had proven that fantasies were just fantasies. Only now did she finally admit that she was in a hopeless situation. Don't say that I took your money for nothing. I've improved your meals for the past few days. Just stay here obediently. Qianxia glanced at the hard steamed bun, a bowl of porridge that looked like clear soup and a few pieces of vegetables. She laughed bitterly and kicked them all away. Hey, you really don't know what's good for you. You don't want it, do you? Then you don't have to eat tomorrow's meal. The person who delivered the meal cursed and left. Qianxia, on the other hand, threw her head back and laughed. Her laughter turned into tears. One careless move and the whole game was lost. Within the slaughtering king's manor. Liemo, didn't you say you were going to take me on a training expedition? Why are you here? Yun Ruoyan followed Li Mo into the slaughtering king's manor. I'm going to marry you, so of course I have to prepare a betrothal gift, Li Mo replied. As soon as Li Mo had returned from the forest of giant trees, he had said that he would prepare a betrothal gift for her, but Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but feel nervous. But we're master and disciple, and the Li kingdom has always placed great importance on etiquette. My father might have some misgivings about this, Yun Ruoyan said worriedly. I've never been bound by etiquette in my life. Li Mo smiled carelessly, then pulled Yun Ruoyan by the hand as they walked to Li Mo's manor. That's because you, the slaughtering king, are above the mortal world. How can mere commoners like us compare to you? Yun Ruoyan grumbled as Li Mo dragged her away. The two of them ran into Li Luo at the entrance of Li Mo's manor. She had clearly received news of Li Mo's return, and had come to welcome him. Yun Ruoyan hadn't had breakfast by the time she returned, and Li Mo instructed Li Luo to prepare some snacks. The two of them then entered the manor hand in hand. Seeing Yun Ruoyan's worried expression, Li Mo pulled her into his embrace and whispered, Don't worry about anything. Just wait to be my consort. A short while later, Li Luo returned with a few snacks and 2 bowls of lotus seed soup. Why is lotus seed soup so fresh in the middle of winter? Yun Ruoyan asked curiously as she looked at the small jade bowls that Li Luo had brought down from the tray. The lotus seed soup in the small white bowl looked exactly the same as it did in the summer. After Miss Yun came to eat, His Highness saw that you liked it so much that he had me gather some, and he's been keeping it in his freezer ever since. Li Luo bowed. Sister Li Luo, it's been a long time since we last met. Yun Ruoyan stood up and tugged on Li Luo's hand. This was the girl that her brother Yun Maxiao admired, and was likely to become her sister-in-law in the future. She had to establish a good relationship with her first. Not only that, but Yun Ruoyan also truly liked this strong and stubborn Beast King girl. Miss Li Luo. Suddenly a footboy's voice drifted over. Miss Li Luo, are you here? I'm here, Li Luo replied. She was just about to head out to speak with Li Luo, but the servant had already found the source of the voice. Greetings, Your Highness. When the servant saw Li Mo sitting in the hall, he immediately knelt down and bowed. When did you return, Your Highness? Please forgive me for my impoliteness. Li Mo glanced at the servant coolly and waved for him to rise. What's the matter? Why are you so flustered? Young Master Yun is here. The servant smiled at Li Luo. That's why I'm here in such a hurry, Mississippi? From the attendant's smile and tone, Yun Ruoyan guessed that her dear brother must have visited quite a few times recently, and he must have given the attendant quite a few benefits. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so enthusiastic about the matter. Since your brother's here, why don't you call him over so that everyone can meet him? Yun Ruoyan knew that Li Mo wanted to use this opportunity to tell her brother about their marriage. If Yun Ruoyan had to ask who she cared about the most, it had to be her dearest brother, Yun Maxiao. Yun Ruoyan nodded and she couldn't help but feel nervous. The servant obeyed the order and trotted off to call Yun Maxiao. After a while, Yun Maxiao was led into the hall by the manservant. Brother. Yun Maxiao was a little surprised to see Li Mo and Yun Ruoyan, but before he could say anything, Yun Ruoyan had already appeared in front of him. Ruoyan, why are you back? When did you get back? Yun Maxiao asked. I just arrived and you're already here. Yun Ruoyan smirked mischievously at Li Luo. Well. Yun Maxiao immediately cleared his throat awkwardly. I'm here to tell Li Luo that I have a message for you. What message? Yun Ruoyan asked. I don't know. Grandfather told me to tell you to come back when you're free, that he has some family matters to discuss with the two of us. As for what it is, he said that he'll tell us once you're back, Yun Maxiao replied. As soon as Yun Ruoyan heard that Lin Zainan had something to tell her, she immediately panicked. If it wasn't something extremely important or urgent, Lin Zainan would never have sent someone to deliver a message to her. In that case, I'll go with you right now, Yun Ruoyan replied. She turned back to Li Mo. I'll head to the Lin Manor with my brother first, then head straight back to the Yun Manor. Alright, I also have some matters to attend to. You can stay at the Yun Manor for the next few days, and I'll go to the Lin Manor to look for your father once I'm done. Yun Maxiao had already turned to leave, but when he heard Li Mo suddenly say that he was going to the Yun Manor to look for his father, he subconsciously stopped and turned back. What business does the slaughtering king have with my father? Since Yun Maxiao had already asked, Li Mo simply said, I'd like to propose to official Yun that I take Yen as my wife. Yun Maxiao paused. But your highness, haven't you already accepted Ruoyan as your disciple? Why are you proposing again? Accepting Yin as a disciple is only a temporary measure, Liemo explained. Both Yin and I didn't take it seriously. How could we not take it seriously? Accepting a disciple as a disciple is a big deal. Yun Maxiao was a little agitated. Having grown up in the army, he had lived under the strict rules of the army, and he couldn't understand Liemo's disregard for etiquette. Brother, let's go find grandfather first. We'll talk about my matters later. Yun Ruoyan glanced at Liemo, then dragged her brother away. The two of them exited the Slaughtering King's manor and boarded the Yun Manor's carriage. Yun Maxiao began to talk to Yun Ruoyan about etiquette and rules, and he excitedly declared that master and disciple were like father and son. Yun Ruoyan had never known that her brother had such a pedantic side to him. Then why do you still like her? Humans and beastkin aren't supposed to be together, according to the rules of etiquette? Liemo was stumped by Yun Ruoyan's question, and after a long pause he replied, my situation is different from yours. How so? Yun Ruoyan continued, we're not related by blood. What's the difference? You're master and disciple. So what if we're master and disciple? Yun Ruoyan looked at her brother. Master and disciple are only in name. You're a scion of a noble family, and Sister Li Luo is a servant of a beastkin. You can pursue Sister Li Luo without regard for your status, so why can't Liemo and I be together without regard for our status? Yun Maxiao was a man of eloquence, but he was at a loss for words when faced with his sister's accusation. I can't out-talk you, Yun Maxiao replied. But if you want to marry the Slaughtering King, you'll have to get our father's approval as well as the emperor's. As for whether or not you Kongming students will agree, I'm not sure. I'm afraid it won't be an easy task. Liemo will take care of that, Yun Ruoyan replied casually. All I have to do is wait to be my bride. Chapter 279. Yun Maxiao looked at Yun Ruoyan's eagerness to get married, and he couldn't help feeling a little dazed. As far as he could remember, his sister was still a young girl. In fact, even if she were a reincarnated soul, Yun Ruoyan was indeed a young girl who hadn't even reached marriageable age. Ruoyan, if I remember correctly, you haven't reached marriageable age yet, have you? No, I'm 14 this year. Next spring, when the phoenix orchid blooms again, I'll be of age. No, I'm 14 this year. Next spring, when the phoenix flower blooms again, I'll be an adult. No, I'm only 14 this year. Next spring, when the phoenix orchid blooms again, I'll be of age. It's only 2 to 3 months from now. It's not too early to start preparing for the wedding now. Ruoyan, it's only been a year, but you've changed so much that you've improved so much. Ruoyan, it's only been a short year, but you've improved so much. Yun Maxiao couldn't help but exclaim. By the time Yun Maxiao returned from the army, Yun Ruoyan had already been cured of the mother-child parasite with Lin Zainan's help, and her appearance had mostly recovered. Yun Ruoyan thought, you haven't seen me before I was cured, and you'd be even more surprised if you did. Apart from some of my own opportunities and hard work, much of my improvement has been due to Limeau's help, Yun Ruoyan replied seriously. Brother, if there's a man in this world who's worth marrying, it's Liemo. Yun Ruoyan's words carried an inexplicable sense of vicissitudes, and Yun Maxiao was taken aback. Yun Ruoyan smiled. So, no matter how much you and father object or how much grandfather disapproves of it, I'll marry Liemo. Since you've already made up your mind, I'll naturally stand by your side, Yun Maxiao sighed. Brother, thank you. Yun Ruoyan leaned her head against her brother's shoulder. Yun Ruoyan was incredibly grateful to the heavens for giving her two trustworthy men in her life. Young master, miss, we've arrived at the Lin Manor, a servant called out from outside the carriage. The two of them alighted from the carriage. Seeing Uncle Lin waiting for them at the gates, they couldn't help but quicken their steps. Uncle Lin, what's the matter that's so urgent? Yun Ruoyan and Yun Maxiao entered the manor. You'll know when you see the old master, Uncle Lin said. The two of them looked at each other and didn't say anything. They followed Uncle Lin to Lin Zainan's study. When the two of them entered the study, they saw Lin Zainan leaning against a chair behind his desk, his eyes vacant, seemingly lost in thought. However, the expression on his face was not one of worry or anxiety. Instead, there was a hint of joy. Yen Shao, you're here. Lin Zainan straightened up from his seat and smiled as soon as he saw the two of them. Yun Ruoyan and Yun Maxiao were relieved to see Lin Zainan like this, but their suspicions only deepened. Grandfather, why did you summon us here in such a hurry? Yun Maxiao asked. There is indeed an important matter that I called you here for. Lin Zainin motioned for Uncle Lin to close the door, then had the two of them sit down. Last night, one of the servants guarding the Lin family's tombs reported that someone had snuck into the Lin family's ancestral tombs to rob them. What? Someone is robbing the Lin family's ancestral grave. Yun Ruoyan and Yun Maxiao were both shocked, and they looked at Lin Zainin even more puzzled. Robbing the ancestral grave was a serious matter, so why did Lin Zainin look so happy? Grandfather, why don't you seem angry at all that the Lin family's ancestral grave has been robbed? Yun Ruoyan asked. Lin Zainin excitedly said, it's because of the theft of the ancestral grave. I discovered something great. What is it? Yun Ruoyan and Yun Maxiao asked at the same time. Lin Zainin took a deep breath. It's highly likely that your mother isn't dead. Grandfather, what did you say? Yun Ruoyan and Yun Maxiao asked at the same time, and Yun Ruoyan stood up from her seat in shock. I said it's highly likely that your mother is still alive, Lin Zainin explained, his voice trembling with excitement. Our mother isn't dead? Yun Ruoyan and Yun Maxiao glanced at each other in disbelief. When Lin Zainin had returned from the Yu Kingdom's herbalist tournament, he had been informed of Lin Yueme's death. However, upon learning that the cause of her death was extremely strange, he had attempted to conduct an autopsy. By that time, however, Lin Yueme's body had already been buried by the Yun family, and the Yun family had tried their best to prevent Lin Zainin from conducting an autopsy. I had no choice, so I snuck into the Yun family's ancestral grave at night and retrieved Yueme's body, Lin Zainin explained. Grandfather, you actually brought mother's body back to the Lin family? Yun Ruoyan and Yun Maxiao were both shocked by Lin Zainin's daring actions. At the time, I was worried about my daughter, and I suspected that Yueme's death had been caused by the Yun family. I couldn't bear to see my daughter die a wrongful death. Lin Zainin's actions were indeed shocking, but they were understandable. Only Uncle Lin and I knew about this, and I kept it a secret even from your grandmother. Then my mother's grave in the Yun family's ancestral grave was fake. Yun Ruoyan hadn't expected that after all these years, she had been paying respects to an empty grave. After I retrieved her body, I turned it into a cenotaph, Lin Zainin continued. When I retrieved Yueme's body, it was so festering that I couldn't even recognize her face, and I didn't find any poison in it. Although I still had my suspicions, I didn't have any concrete evidence, so I could only let it go. After that, I buried the body in the Lin family's ancestral grave. Yun Ruoyan remembered that there was a nameless grave right next to her grandmother's grave. Every time she went to pay her respects, Lin Zainin would always make her kowtow. That must have been Lin Yueme's grave. But just last night, Lin Zainin suddenly exclaimed. That grave robber dug up the body I retrieved from the Yun family. The grave robber didn't dare touch it, so he reported it to me and I personally took care of it. When I placed the bones back into the grave, I discovered that they weren't Yueme's. Lin Zainin was so excited that his beard trembled. When Yueme was learning to ride a horse when she was young, she fell off her horse and broke her left arm. I personally used bone-setting grass to set her bones back together. Yun Ruoyan knew about bone-setting grass. By placing it into a broken bone, it could help the bone grow back to its original shape. However, the seams between the bones would have a bluish hue that would never disappear. I saw that the left arm was clearly intact and that wasn't your mother at all. Lin Zainin stood up from his seat. That's why I'm certain that your mother is still alive. Our mother is still alive? Yun Ruoyan looked at her brother, who was both shocked and excited. For a moment he didn't know how to react. It took a long while for the siblings to digest this sudden piece of good news. In that case, where could our mother be now? Yun Maxiao asked. Both siblings looked toward Lin Zainin, hoping that he had some clues. Lin Zainin shook his head. I don't know either, but you should ask your father. Yueme is most likely hidden by him. Lin Zainin's voice was cold, and his disgust for Yunlan was obvious. I wanted to question him immediately, but he had 1,000 reasons to refute me, and I wouldn't be able to get anything out of him. That's why I hurriedly called you two over to discuss how we should investigate this matter. Yun Maxiao frowned. Grandfather, forgive me for being blunt, but father's feelings for mother are real. If father had faked mother's death, how would you explain all these years of grief? Yun Maxiao had seen it with his own eyes. Yun Maxiao had spent a great deal of effort to preserve the courtyard where Lin Yueme had once lived, and he would often visit that pavilion to reminisce about her. Even when Yun Ruoyan visited the ancestral grave every year, she would often see Yun Lan standing in front of Lin Yueme's grave. If it were fake, it would only be for a short while, but how could it have been fake all these years? Even so, he's still a suspect, Lin Zainan continued. Lin Zainan replied, we don't have any leads right now and Yunlan is our only lead. We'll have to start with him. Grandfather, don't worry, Ruoyan and I will definitely get to the bottom of this matter. No matter where mother is right now, we'll definitely bring her back to reunite with her family, Yun Maxiao promised resolutely. The two of them left the Lin Manor, and Yun Ruoyan returned to the Yun Manor with her father. Yun Ruoyan first visited her father and told him about the situation at Kongming Academy. When Yun Lan learned that Yun Ruoyan had been sent to the alternate dimension, his expression changed slightly. However, he didn't say much, only instructing her to cultivate diligently and be prepared. Yun Ruoyan nodded and prepared to leave, but when she reached the door, her father suddenly called out to her. Tomorrow, go with your brother to pay your respects at your mother's grave. Yun Lan's voice came from behind Yun Ruoyan. Yun Ruoyan turned around to see her father sitting behind his desk, his head lowered as he scribbled something, as if he'd just said those words without much thought. Yes, father. The two siblings nodded and left. After that, the two of them went to visit their grandmother, the Yun matriarch, whom they hadn't seen in a long time. To Yun Ruoyan's surprise, Qin Jianmei and Yun Ruoyu were both in the Yun matriarch's quarters. Greetings, grandmother. Yun Ruoyan bowed to the Yun matriarch. Ah, my dear Yin, you're finally back to see grandmother. The Yun matriarch smiled and extended her hand. Yun Ruoyan took the Yun matriarch's hand and sat by her side. Yin is unfilial, and I can't always be by your side, grandmother. The Yun matriarch didn't want to let go of Yun Ruoyan's hand. Although grandmother hopes that Yin will always be by your side, cultivation is more important. The Yun family will still have to rely on you in the future. The Yun matriarch sighed. I'm old and I don't know how many more years I'll have to live. You juniors have to take care of yourselves and don't let me die before you. Yun Ruoyao's death had indeed dealt a heavy blow to Yun Lan and the Yun matriarch. The Yun family was one of the more sparsely populated of the larger families. With Yun Ruoyao's death, the only descendants left were Yun Ruoyan, Yun Ruoyu, and Yun Maxiao. Chapter 280. Luckily, Ruoyu was sick that day and didn't go. The three of you must unite and work hard to support our Yun family. The Yun matriarch's gaze swept over her three grandsons before finally landing on Yun Ruoyan, her eyes full of love and concern. Grandmother, don't worry, we'll definitely do it, Yun Maxiao replied. Sister, you must stay at home for a few more days, Yun Ruoyu began. Right now, I'm the only girl in the Yun Manor, and I don't even have someone to talk to. That's right, second Mississippi Qin Jianmei smiled. Ruoyu used to be a lively girl. Now, she spends her mornings with me, reads the sutras, visits me at noon, and shuts herself up in her own room at night. I'm worried that she'll be bored out of her mind. That's right. Thanks to Ruoyu's frequent visits, she's become more and more obedient. The Yun matriarch looked at Ruoyu lovingly. But I'm afraid that I'll be bored out of my mind. Ruoyu doesn't feel bored, Yun Ruoyu replied. Ruoyu loves spending time with grandmother and mother, but now that Sister Ruoyan is back, I'll be able to play with her more often. Yun Ruoyan noticed that Yun Ruoyu seemed to have become a completely different person. Not only had her personality changed, but even her taste in clothes had changed. In the past, Yun Ruoyu had loved brightly colored clothes, but now she was wearing a plain-colored dress similar to Qin Jianmei's, something Yun Ruoyan had never seen before. Qin Jianmei, who had been cooped up in her room all this time, seemed to be more amicable and approachable. I'm afraid I won't be able to stay for long, but I'll be at home early in the next few days. If you're free, Sister Ruoyu, feel free to come visit me. Yun Ruoyan smiled. As they chatted for a while, the sky gradually darkened. The Yun matriarch was afraid that they wouldn't be used to the food, so she didn't ask them to stay. The group left her rooms and returned to their own rooms. As Yun Ruoyan and Yun Maxiao passed by Madame Anne's quarters, they suddenly heard a woman's laughter coming from within the walls. The laughter fluctuated between high and low, and after a few moments, it turned into sobs. The woman cried and sang at the same time. Her voice was mournful and desolate. Yun Ruoyan frowned at her brother, who explained, It's Madame Anne. Ever since Yun Ruoyao's death, she's been bedridden ever since. Later, concubine Qin gave her some medicine and she gradually got better. But after he recovered, his mind became abnormal. Now it seems that he has really gone mad. Yun Ruoyan nodded. She was neither happy nor worried about Madame Anne's and Yun Ruoyao's fates. To her, they were simply people she didn't want to be. When Yun Ruoyan returned to her quarters, the maids were naturally overjoyed. Shilan and Peony had prepared a table full of dishes for her, all of which were her favorites. Yun Maxiao had dinner in her residence before leaving. At the same time, 1,000 miles away in the Beastkin Valley of the Ueli Mountains, an ancient castle stood quietly in the dark night. There was a secret chamber beneath the castle, and in the middle of it was a jade statue of a beauty. "Your son greets you, mother." Li Mo bowed to the statue. "At ease." A pleasant but cold female voice sounded from the statue. Is there something important that brings you here at this time?" "Mother, the young miss of the Yun family, Yun Ruoyan, has already become an 8th-rank blade master. The time has come for me to marry her after the new year, and I've come to ask for your permission." "That girl isn't of marriageable age yet, is she?" Empress Xuetong asked. "She'll be of marriageable age in the spring." "She's not even 15 but already an 8th-rank blade master? That's quite rare on the Xuanhuan continent." Empress Xuetong mused. "We found a heavenly spirit fruit in the forest of giant trees, and she only broke through after consuming it," Li Mo replied. "Reaching 8th rank with a single heavenly spirit fruit? That's quite impressive considering his age. If you can marry her, it will only be beneficial to us. Moreover, her physique will be beneficial to your cultivation. Not only will mother not object to this marriage, she will even help you." Empress Xuetong ordered, "Sunan, bring me the cloud sky fruit." Sunan nodded, then walked into a side chamber of the secret chamber. Soon he returned with a golden jade box in his hand, which he handed to Li Mo. Li Mo glanced at Empress Xuetong, and only after receiving her approval did he open the box. As soon as the box was opened, a multicolored light illuminated the entire chamber. The cloud sky fruit was a spiritual herb that surpassed the heavenly spirit fruit. It could help a 9th-rank cultivator break through the bottleneck to become a sword saint. However, it had one drawback. After consuming it, one's cultivation would forever be stuck at the first stage of the sword saint realm, and no matter how hard one tried, one wouldn't be able to advance any further. Even so, the people of the Xuanhuan continent were eager to get their hands on it. Li Mo hadn't expected Empress Xuetong to bring out such a valuable spiritual herb. "Mother, I do know a little about Yunlan. Although he seems respectful and law-abiding on the surface, he's actually quite shrewd. However, he is a very shrewd person. As long as he can afford it, he will not hesitate to break the rules," Empress Xuetong said calmly. Yunlan was currently an early-stage 9th-rank blade master, and it was almost impossible for him to become a sword saint in his lifetime. However, with this cloud sky fruit, he had a chance of becoming a sword saint. This was the lifelong dream of almost every cultivator, and Yunlan was no exception. "Thank you, mother." Li Mo bowed to Empress Xuetong, the box containing the cloud sky fruit. "You and I share a common goal, and that is for you to reach a higher level of cultivation. Then we'll slaughter our way into the other world and destroy the Silver Dragon clan to avenge your father. Everything we've done is for this goal, and I'll do whatever it takes to achieve it. I hope you'll do the same." Empress Xuetong's tone was solemn. "I understand. I'll do everything in my power to destroy the Silver Dragons." Li Mo looked at Empress Xuetong, his eyes resolute. "Good. Go do what you have to do then," Empress Xuetong said. Li Mo left with Sunan. As soon as the two of them left the secret chamber, a man walked out from a side chamber. This man was none other than Li Mo's master, the first elder of Kongming Academy. "Do you think Imo knows about Yun Ruoyan's demonic dragon bloodline?" Empress Xuetong asked the first elder. The first elder thought for a moment before replying, "It's probably just a suspicion but not a confirmation. He's not as familiar with the demonic dragon clan as you or I are, so it'll take some time to confirm his suspicions." As it turned out, the first elder had already begun to suspect Yun Ruoyan's identity the moment the demonic energy from the demonic ring entered her body. During this period of time, he had been investigating Yun Ruoyan's identity. Through his investigations, he had learned that she had been poisoned, and that despite her status as a wife-born daughter, her father, Yunlan, didn't like her at all. The first elder had already suspected Yun Ruoyan's identity, and his investigations only confirmed his suspicions. It wasn't until he had sent people to investigate both the Yun and Lin family tombs that he finally found evidence that confirmed his suspicions. Yun Ruoyan wasn't Yunlan's biological daughter. Her biological father was someone else, and her mother, Lin Yueme, was likely still alive. Chapter 281. When the first elder began investigating Yun Ruoyan's parentage, he hadn't yet met with Empress Xuetong. It was only because of Li Mo's unusual attitude toward Yun Ruoyan that he had begun to investigate. After the first elder met with Empress Shui Tong, his investigation of Yun Ruoyan's identity had deepened. After confirming that Yun Ruoyan possessed the demonic dragon's bloodline, the first elder had decided to pledge his loyalty to Empress Shui Tong and told her about Yun Ruoyan's past. How did you determine that Lin Yueme was still alive? Empress Shui Tong asked the Grand Elder. I sent people to the Yun family's tomb to open the coffins and examine the corpses, but they discovered that it was only a cenotaph. The first elder replied, later on the people I sent inadvertently learned that there was a nameless tomb in the Lin family tomb. It was built not long after Lin Yueme's death. But at that time no one from the Lin family had passed away, so I sent him to take a look at the nameless tomb. As a result, Lin Zainan was alerted, and he told me that Lin Yueme was still alive. The great elder looked at Empress Shui Tong and said, but I don't think we should hide this from Sunimo. Even if we don't tell him, he will find out sooner or later. If he finds out that we're intentionally hiding it from him, he'll probably blame us. Shui Tong heard the first elder's words and her voice was cold and resolute. I've thought about what you've said, but now that Imo has feelings for Yun Ruoyan, I'm afraid that he'll make a mistake at the critical moment. It's better to hide this from him for the time being. The first elder had seen Li Mo's love for Yun Ruoyan with his own eyes. If there came a day when Li Mo had to make use of Yun Ruoyan or even sacrifice her, Li Mo might not be able to bring himself to do so. Have you ever thought of meeting this Yun Ruoyan? After all, Sunimo is going to marry her. The great elder suddenly said. There's no need. I can't let outsiders know of my identity. Let the two of them gain some more experience. If one day I can confirm that Yun Ruoyan is truly willing to sacrifice herself for him, I'll see her then, Empress Shui Tong said. In order to form an alliance with the demonic dragon clan, they had to make use of the only remaining bloodline of the demonic dragon clan on the Xuanhuan continent. However, this matter could not be rushed. He had to plan it step by step. This was a heaven-sent opportunity, and Empress Shui Tong had to grasp it no matter what. Over the past few days, Yun Ruoyan and Yun Maxiao had been investigating Lin Yueme's mother. Naturally, the two of them couldn't ask Yun Lan directly, so they were at a loss for a while. She tried to learn more about Lin Yueme from the Yun matriarch, but the Yun matriarch didn't know much about her. According to the Yun matriarch, ever since Lin Yueme had married into the Yun family, Yun Lan had protected her well. In order to prevent Lin Yueme from being bullied, Yun Lan would accompany her when he paid his respects to the elders. On more than one occasion he had stood up against the elders for her sake. Mrs. Liu said that Yun Lan was a very sensible child since he was a child. But when it came to Lin Yueme he was like a devil. The elders couldn't do anything about it, so they just let him be. Grandmother, after my mother remarried my father, did she ever leave the Yun household for long periods of time? Mrs. Liu also thought about it and said, after your mother gave birth to your brother, she moved to Fanghua Garden. Since then we rarely saw her. But I don't think that's the case. Why are you asking about this? It's nothing. I heard from my grandfather that my mother was very lively and energetic when she was young, so I was just asking. The Yun matriarch frowned. I didn't think she was lively, but your mother really was a rare beauty. She just didn't like to smile. Oh, is that so? Yun Ruoyan handed a freshly peeled walnut to the Yun matriarch. Grandmother, here, have a walnut. Since they hadn't been able to obtain any valuable information from the Yun matriarch, the two of them decided to start investigating Lin Yueme's past in the Yun household. Yun Maxiao started with a few servants, while Yun Ruoyan focused on Qin Jianmei. Yun Ruoyan knew that Qin Jianmei had once been on good terms with her mother, and that she might know something valuable. Coincidentally, Yun Ruoyu came to play with Yun Ruoyan early in the morning, and the two of them had a cup of tea and some snacks. Yun Ruoyu asked Yun Ruoyan a few things about Kongming Academy, and Yun Ruoyan told her a little. Yun Ruoyan then asked her about the Yun household as well as how Madame An had gone mad. At first, Yun Ruoyan thought that Yun Ruoyu spoke normally, but when she mentioned Madame An's madness, her expression and tone seemed a little unnatural. Although Yun Ruoyu's unnaturalness wasn't obvious, it didn't escape Yun Ruoyan's eyes. Although Yun Ruoyan couldn't think of a reason for it, she kept an eye out for Yun Ruoyan. When Yun Ruoyu was about to leave, Yun Ruoyan suggested that she go to Qin Jianmei's cottage with her. Yun Ruoyu was a little surprised. My mother should be in her morning classes right now, and I'm afraid she won't have time to entertain you, sister. That's fine, Yun Ruoyan replied. I can wait in the cottage. It's already late winter and it snowed yesterday. The plum blossoms in the cottage must be in full bloom by now, and I'd like to take this opportunity to admire them. Yun Ruoyu didn't refuse Yun Ruoyan's invitation, and the two of them left Yun Ruoyan's cottage. As they passed by Madame Anne's cottage, Yun Ruoyan could hear her crying and laughing. Mother's always been a strong-willed person, and she doesn't seem like someone who'd crumble so easily. How did she suddenly go crazy? Madame Anne didn't go crazy all of a sudden, Ling Lan, who was following behind Yun Ruoyan, interjected. Peony and Xilan had been busy preparing food and desserts ever since their young miss had suddenly returned, and they'd been incredibly busy preparing food and snacks. Then they suddenly realized that Yun Ruoyan had grown half a head taller than she had been in the last few months. The winter clothes they'd made before were all too small, and they had to remake them. Because they were worried that Yun Ruoyan would suddenly leave, the two of them were so busy that they had to burn the midnight oil to get the winter clothes ready for Yun Ruoyan to take care of before she left. As a result, Yun Ruoyan had brought Ling Lan with her to serve her whenever she walked around the Yun Manor. When Ling Lan said that Madame Anne hadn't gone crazy all of a sudden, Yun Ruoyan asked her how she knew. I often hang out with one of Madame Anne's maids, and I heard from her that although Madame Anne was unusually grief-stricken after Miss Ruoyan's death, she was still in good spirits, Ling Lan explained. It's just that her illness, coupled with the pain of losing her daughter, worsened her illness. She saw many doctors and took a lot of medicine. Although she slowly recovered, her mental state deteriorated day by day. At first, she often talked in her sleep at night, but later she began to talk nonsense during the day. Finally, she went completely crazy. So she didn't go crazy all of a sudden. Yun Ruoyan felt that something was amiss. It wouldn't have been strange if Madame Anne had suddenly gone crazy after suffering a major blow, but it was strange that she had gone crazy bit by bit. Sister Ruoyao's death really was a big blow to Mother. Yun Ruoyu sighed as she tugged on Yun Ruoyan's arm. She couldn't take it physically, and as time passed, neither could she. When Sister Ruoyao passed away, I went to visit her, but Mother suddenly flew into a rage and scolded me, and I didn't dare visit her again. As the two of them spoke, they arrived at the plum-cutting cottage. Although the cottage was located in a relatively remote part of the Yun Manor, it was quite elegant. Amidst the white snow was a patch of red, and the winter plum blossoms in the yard were exceptionally beautiful. Compared to the Yun Manor at this time of year, this was the best place to visit. Although they were both located in a remote area, the plum-cutting cottage looked much better than Yun Ruoyan's own cottage. It was clear that Yun Lan treated Qin Jianmei differently. Mother, Sister Ruoyan and I are here to visit you. As soon as the two of them entered the cottage, Yun Ruoyu called out to one of the rooms. However, Qin Jianmei didn't immediately respond to Yun Ruoyu's call. Mother must be doing her morning exercises, Yun Ruoyu replied. Let's go warm up in the main hall. Yun Ruoyu pulled Yun Ruoyan into another room, calling out to Mei Xiang as they walked. A plainly dressed maid appeared, and Yun Ruoyu had instructed her to prepare tea. Sister Ruoyan, please don't take offense. There's only one maid in the cottage and I'm afraid the tea and pastries aren't as good as they should be, Yun Ruoyu apologized. Don't worry, I'll go out and admire the plum blossoms while I'm waiting for tea. Yun Ruoyan stood up as soon as she sat down in the main hall. As she walked out of the house, she said to Ling Lan beside her, Go and help Mei Xiang. Be her assistant. Ling Lan nodded and left and Yun Ruoyan followed. Sister Ruoyan, it's so cold outside, don't freeze. Yun Ruoyu hurriedly followed Yun Ruoyan out of the cottage. The plum blossoms were in full bloom in the courtyard, and Yun Ruoyan pretended to admire them. Her gaze subconsciously drifted toward a small cottage to the west. A thick fragrance wafted out from that cottage. It was the incense of worshipping Buddha, but it was much more fragrant than normal. It smells so good. Yun Ruoyan sniffed. It doesn't smell like normal incense. Oh, it's the incense my mother made herself, Yun Ruoyu explained. At this moment, with a creaking sound, the door of the side room was opened, and Qin Jianmei, who was dressed in plain clothes, walked out of the room. Second miss, what brings you here today? Qin Jianmei smiled as she walked toward Yun Ruoyan. It's snowing well today and I thought that the plum blossoms here would be nice, so I followed Sister Ruoyu here. Yun Ruoyan also walked toward Qin Jianmei. Madam, you've been worshipping Buddha for more than a decade now. You're truly a devout believer. Yun Ruoyan tilted her head toward the cottage behind her, which Qin Jianmei had already closed. I heard from Ruoyu that Madam worships Buddha, and I'd like to go and pray as well. Would that be convenient? You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.